Dear listeners, thank you for your incredible support in helping our channel grow. We're aiming for 1,000 subscribers, so please support us by subscribing and helping us reach this milestone. Now let's start the story. Present, Ben, Bernie, Liz, and Desiree meeting Mabel. We pass through the still-destroyed front door and begin to walk toward the front gate. Bernie asks, Ben, when are you going to get the front door fixed? I think for a moment and reply, Bernie, replacing the door isn't going to be a simple matter. Looking back at the door, I pause for a moment and swear, son of a... Liz saves me by interrupting. See biscuit. Desiree remarks, that was a close call, Mr. Blaine. You almost owed another quarter to the swearing jar. I dash back to the door, look at it closely, and ask Bernie, please have Inga come out here immediately. Bernie runs inside while Liz asks, what has it been? I point to the edge of the door and continue. I can't believe all the experts missed this. The door is designed to prohibit forced entry by manual means. They used Primacord, genericized trademark for any detonating cord. Primacord consists of a continuous core of PTN, RDX, or other high explosive, bound by textile yarns and finished with plastic and wax as waterproofing agents. To breach the door. Inga arrives. I point at the door and ask, how did you all miss this? Inga quickly recognizes it and responds, Ben, they used an explosive device to breach the door. I reply, that's right, and from the looks of it, I would say it was Primacord. This door was designed to withstand normal entry methods, so they needed to blow it. Inga continues, but Primacord requires a blasting cap to detonate it. I don't see the remains of one anywhere. I concur. Yes, they probably took that with them. Inga says, let me get our bomb experts to look at this. Inga leaves and Bernie suggests, Ben, why don't Liz, Desiree, and I continue to go meet Mabel? I smile at them and reply, thanks. I want to stay here and see what the bomb expert says. They leave and finally Inga returns with the FBI explosive specialist. They begin to examine the door and one of them says, we would really like to take this door back to Denver for analysis. I inform him, you're going to have a hell of a time getting the door out of the house. It's set in concrete. The agent expresses surprise. I thought this was a log cabin. I knock on the wall. It makes a thunk noise and then I reply, the walls were designed so people think it's a log wall. In reality, it's faux logs made out of concrete. I can call our contractor and see when he can replace the door. I take out my phone and call the contractor. I explain the problem to him, declare it's an emergency, and he says, you're lucky I have a replacement door in stock. I can be out in a few hours to replace it. Until we get there, make sure no one screws with it. I relay the message to the agent. He will be here in a few hours to replace the door. He also asked that you don't try to remove it yourself. The agent says, okay, let me know when he shows up. Then he wanders back inside. Bernie and his entourage arrive. Mabel runs up to me, hugs me, and says, Ben, I'm so sorry about what happened. I smile at her and say, don't worry, we will get them back. Mabel says, well, I'm here to cook for you. Now, I heard you haven't had anything since breakfast. Desiree remarks, that's right, Mr. Blaine. I told her. I tease Desiree and say, hey, I thought we were friends. Desiree replies, we are, but you need to eat. If you get sick, when Fiona, James, and Ms. Blaine get back from vacation, you will be sick and then we can't play. Mabel emphatically states, don't worry, Desiree. I will make sure Mr. Blaine eats. Now how many people am I cooking for? I shrug my shoulders and answer, Mabel, I have no idea. Perhaps Inga knows. Mabel says, don't worry, I will find her and figure it out myself. Mabel, Bernie, Liz, and Desiree leave, and I'm left staring at the front door. Damn, I really wish Destiny was here, because I want to go over the area around the front door again to see what else was missed. Gretchen announces in my comm unit, Ben, your wolf is returning. I make a call to the front gate. Do not shoot the wolf that is coming in. As she runs up to the front of the house, I reach down, pet her, and say, Destiny, they blasted the front door open and I want to make sure we didn't miss anything. She stays in her wolf form, begins to search the ground, and growls as she finds something. I walk over, and she's found some pieces of the blasting cap. How the hell did we miss these in the first place? I call Inga on the comm. Inga, we found some of the blasting cap pieces. Inga replies with obvious surprise. How did we miss those? I will be right there with the FBI agent. Inga and the agent arrive. He sees Destiny and says, is that a real wolf? Inga answers, don't worry, she's tame. He warily walks over, keeping an eye on Destiny the whole time. I point to the ground and remark, she found them right here. He bends down, looks at them, and says, I can tell you how we missed them. They were stepped on. This might be the first break we've had in the case. If I can recover the ID of the detonator, we can determine where it was purchased. He carefully removes the pieces using a wooden dowel and places them in an evidence bag. He turns to me and asks, any more news on the removal of the door? I shake my head no. Present, Samantha, eating lunch with Stacy. I arrive a little early at the restaurant, and Henri takes me to our normal table. It's so nice having the restaurant again, so I comment, Henri, it's good to see you again. He smiles and answers with his French accent. Oui. However, Miss Mabel left temporarily today to go back to the Blaine's cabin to cook for them. So our menu today is limited. I remember when Mabel first came to work at the restaurant, Henri and she had huge fights. It was good to see they finally worked things out. Stacy arrives, waves at me, and comes right over. I stand, we hug each other. Then we take our chairs as Stacy says, Ben Blaine would not accept any of my men to help him. However, he did accept Mabel to cook for him. I smile and comment, that was nice of you to let Mabel go. Stacy confides in a whisper, I really didn't have a choice. It was let her go or she was going to quit. I reply, and losing her would probably cause a loss of the 5-star rating this restaurant has. I forgot to mention that fact. The addition of Mabel and her dishes made the restaurant world-class. Hell, it was booked months in advance, and people came up from Denver just to eat here and of course to sample some of the beer from the local brewery. The food critics raved about the restaurant. It was a boon to the local economy as many people booked romantic getaway weekends in the local hotels. At first, Stacy considered purchasing one of the hotels, but Alexi had dissuaded her. I finally worked up the nerve to ask Stacy, so, what do you think about the kidnapping? Stacy smiles and says, first, Samantha, I didn't have anything to do with this situation. Second, the people who did perpetrate this were very smart because they wore masks so Jennifer couldn't put a spell on them. And third, even though this sounds bad, they did me a favor. I counter, Stacy, even with Jennifer and the children missing, you still don't have a chance with Ben. In fact, I would probably say you have even less of a chance with him now than ever before. Stacy changes the subject. I really don't want to talk about this. Let's eat. The waitress comes over with a revised menu. We look at it. Order, then Stacy remarks, I forgot to mention, your bodyguard will be here in a few minutes. And I also doubled the security at the castle, other employees' houses, and the businesses. Stacy's mobile phone rings. She looks at it and says, it's Bill. I need to take this. She listens and says, thanks, Bill. That's exactly what we thought would happen. Make sure to get a security team over there and set the rotation schedule you talked about. She ends the call and remarks, Irina and Miranda have left Alexi's house and are at Ben's cabin. I needed to make sure we have security covering Alexi's family. I question, how many babies do they currently have? Stacy laughs and admits, I sure as hell don't know. You could always interview him and find out. I complain, Stacy, the last time I tried to interview him, I thought he was going to make me another one of his wives. Stacy laughs and says, yeah, he pulled that on me too. Our meals come and we begin to eat. Present, Gretchen, call from her store. My phone rings. I have a surprise when I see it's from the store. When I answer, Mike says, Gretchen, the order is all messed up. They gave us too many of the wrong items and not enough of the right items. I ask, Mike, do I need to call the supplier? Mike says, no, don't worry about it. I will handle it. I just wanted to keep you in the loop. I praise him. Mike, you're doing a great job, but please feel free to call me if you need anything. Mike haws around and finally asks, Gretchen, what about the items you pulled from inventory? We need to account for those. I reply, Mike, you're exactly right, and we can't just write those off. I haven't talked to Ben about this, but let's open up a credit account for them. I know they will pay for the equipment. I see someone I haven't seen forever, so I end the call. Mike, I need to talk to someone. Mabel walks into the control room, so I run to her, hug her and say, I can't believe what happened. Mabel echoes my feelings. I thought I was going to have a heart attack when I saw Samantha's report. I ask, so you came back to cook? Mabel affirms, yes, I did. Now, if I could just find Inga and determine how many people I'm cooking for. I smile and say, I will call her and have her meet you in the kitchen. Mabel says, I sure wish I was back under better circumstances. I better get to the kitchen and get started. I call Inga on the comm system and inform her. Inga, Mabel is back and is waiting in the kitchen to find out how many people she's cooking for. Inga replies, I will go to the kitchen immediately. Present, Inga, meeting Mabel in the kitchen. Mabel showing up to cook for us again is a godsend because it keeps me from having to call out for food for everyone. Before I leave the conference room, I ask the FBI, how many agents do you currently have here? He replies, why, I have 10 agents. I inform him, our cook has arrived and she would like a head count. I'm going to meet with her in the kitchen and we'll be right back. I reach the kitchen, hug Mabel and say, thank you for coming to help. I had no idea how I was going to feed everyone. Mabel says, I'm here so everyone else can concentrate on finding Jennifer and the children. So, how many people am I feeding? I begin to enumerate. There are 10 FBI agents, for security officers that I brought, Ben, Irina, Miranda, and of course Bernie, Liz, and Desiree. Mabel says, okay, that's 20. I will cook for 25 just in case. I smile at her and express my gratitude. Thank you, Mabel. You're a lifesaver. Oh, I forgot about Tom. He's supposed to be here later. Mabel quickly adds, the way that man eats my cooking, I'd better make even more. We both laugh, and I excuse myself. Sorry, Mabel, but I need to get back to things. Present, Desiree, Liz, and Bernie talk about some things. Desiree is incredibly intuitive, and after a short period of cocking her head, she looks at us and asks, okay, Mama and Papa, what is really going on here? I know that Ms. Blaine and Fiona and James did not go on a vacation. I question Desiree, what makes you say that? She grins and replies, the cabin is full of strange people who I think work for the government. They would not be here if they were just on a vacation. Bernie confesses, Desiree, you are right. Some bad men came and took Ms. Blaine, Fiona, and James. The men here are federal agents who are trying to find them. Desiree asks, so is that how the front door was broken? I nod my head, yes it is. But don't worry, this is a safe place now. Desiree questions, how can it be safe with the front door broken? I reply, because there are many agents here to protect us. Desiree thinks about it, but I'm not sure she believes we are safe. Present, Yents, in the back of a van. I hear a car drive up and begin to yell, help, help me please. Then I kick the door even harder. I hear a man's voice announce, we're with the Colorado Highway Patrol and are approaching the vehicle. Please stay calm. I yell, calm my derriere, they took my children. I hear the back door open. He looks inside and asks, are you Jennifer Blaine? I reply, heck yes I am. Get this damn hood off my head and this tie wrap off my wrists. He complies and asks, where are you children? I swear, they took them. The scumsuckers took them. He replies, let me call this and then we need to get some treatment for your wrists. I look down and notice the tie wrap had cut my wrists and they were bleeding. He asks, can you give us more details about the kidnappers? I think for a moment and reply, they all wore wolf masks. Then I remember something else, but I don't dare tell them. Present, Tom calls Inga with the good news. My phone rings. I see that it's Tom and answer. Tom practically crows, Inga, good news. The kidnappers released Jennifer. I immediately ask, what about Fiona and James? A much subdued Tom replies, unfortunately, they still have both children. We're arranging for Jennifer to be returned to the cabin, and I should be there later. I follow with a teasing prompt. I hope you are not delayed so you don't miss Mabel's dinner. Tom asks, Mabel is back and cooking? I reply, she sure is, and you do know she's even a better cook now than before. Tom says with some enthusiasm, good, I'm on my way. I hold up my hand to get attention and announce, Jennifer Blaine was released by the kidnappers. Unfortunately, they are still holding both children. Ben immediately asks, how is my wife? I reply, Tom didn't give me any more information. Flashback, Masha, Tanya, and Louise, the evening. We went to the garage, and I was slightly surprised at how full it was. Tanya said, Masha, we would all like to thank you for taking the time tonight to teach us Krav Maga. I replied, Tanya, after dealing with the police in this city, it has been a dream of mine to teach women self-defense. Several of the women murmured when I commented about the police, so I assumed I had the appropriate group of women. Louise interrupted, Masha, are we going to work on how to fall correctly tonight? I smiled at her and said, no, not tonight. I thought I would work on something more practical and useful. Tonight we will learn how to defeat an attacker who comes up behind you and chokes you. This is a common tactic that men use to attack women. We first need to divide the group into partners. Tanya takes charge and orders, everyone count off. I smile because she reminds me of a drill sergeant in the military. Louise asked, Masha, can I be your partner? I replied, of course you may. I begin the lesson. The first thing you need to realize is that it's almost impossible to kill someone by choking them from behind. The action is more about controlling a person than anything else. A woman raised her hand and revealed, my ex-husband did this to me and slammed me into a wall. I replied, we will work on a technique tonight for when someone wants to slam you into a wall. I looked at Louise and ordered, Louise, choke me from behind. Louise came up behind me, put both her hands around my neck and squeezed. I continued, if you notice I can still talk even with Louise doing this. When this happens, your first response will be fear, but you must never become fearful. The man doing this wants to make you afraid, but what you need to do is control the situation. Louise's hands were still around my neck. I took a step forward, bent slightly, twisted to the right, and brought my right arm around. My action broke her hold around my neck, so I slid my right arm down her arm and into her neck. I then switched feet and began to apply kicks and other countermeasures to Louise. I continued, the whole idea behind Krav Maga is to actively counterattack your opponent. Tanya remarked, remember how Masha did that with the police when they attacked us? If it hadn't been for Masha, many of us would have been injured. I said, let me show you the steps again. I again went through the steps, repeating each one as I did it. Then I said, It is your turn to try it while I observe. I walked around the room and assisted the women as they attempted the move. Most did well, but others were having some problems which I helped to correct. Louise asked, Masha, can I try it? I began to choke Louise, then she followed the steps perfectly. The woman from earlier asked, what if they slam you into the wall? I replied, I will bet it hurt your face when your ex-husband did that. She grimaced and answered, it sure did. He broke my nose. I said, the technique is similar, but the main thing you have to do is protect your face. I ordered, Louise, begin to choke me and move toward the wall. Louise complied, but when we got to the wall, I put my right arm against the wall, turned my head to the right, and said, this is how you protect your face. I continued with all the other moves exactly the same as before and remarked, it is important that you just step forward with one foot since you do not want to get both feet against the wall. The women tried it, and I caught one of them turning the wrong way and quickly corrected her. Then I attacked Louise and she performed excellently. I said, that's the lesson for tonight. I would advise all of you to practice this many times at home until the action becomes comfortable. Tanya and the other women thanked me and Louise asked, so it's time for yoga? I replied, of course, and we completed about 30 minutes of yoga exercises. I was correct when I predicted the women who used the training mats had problems with some of the moves. After the women left, Tanya approached me and said, we should find a storefront for you to do this in. I asked, don't I need licenses to do this? Tanya smiled and said, yes, and as your lawyer I can make sure all that's taken care of. Tanya said one more thing. By the way, I didn't want to mention it when the other women were here, but things are going great with John Rowan. Soon he should be in no position to ever bother you again. Louise smiled and said, too bad. I wanted Masha to kick his ass. Flashback, Jack and Ben, raining hellfire on the Taliban. The artillery stopped. Ben looked through his scope and declared, well, that should take care of all those scumsuckers. I replied, hell, you destroyed the whole area. Ben said, that was the plan. We should have done this ages ago since the scumsuckers were holed up there and were going to keep attacking us. Now they have no place to hide. It's just a shame that we couldn't have rescued all the children. I tried to make Ben feel better. Well, you rescued as many as you could. Ben countered, damn it to hell, Jack. Others died because we didn't have the resources here to save them. It's a good thing I already signed my re-enlistment papers. Otherwise, I might have considered leaving here and joining the CIA in hopes of becoming more effective. I knew Ben was upset, but I didn't realize how upset he was. I came up with what I thought was an excellent distraction. Ben, why don't you help with a mission that I need to tackle? Ben looked hard at me and asked, tell me about the mission first. I replied, we need to make a midnight requisition run to HQ. Ben laughed. There's no way George would let us both leave at the same time. I explained, Colonel Maggie will authorize it. We will do it overnight and be back in the morning with our booty. Not only that, the last time we made a run like this, we also took the general's personal stash of coffee. That got Ben's attention, so he asked, was it good coffee? I answered, I never had better. Ben asked, how does this work? I explained, first, we borrow a refrigerated semi and drive it to HQ. Then we load the trailer full of supplies and haul us back to John. Ben asked, who the hell is John? I replied, he's the cook at our base of operations. Ben sneered. Is that the same cook who made everyone sick? I explained, his food made the troops sick because HQ sent the food to him without refrigeration and it spoiled in transit. So are you in on this? Ben finally agreed. Okay, this sounds good to me. I went to the comm room and called Colonel Maggie for approval. Flashback, Jennifer at home. I knew I should be upset about Mother. However, I wasn't because her return to the hospital solved several problems. The first being grandmother's witch lessons and the second being Ballfreikenlet. Daniela continued to hug me and said, Senorita Jennifer, let us have some lunch. I smiled and said, I would like that as long as it's not ceviche. Daniela laughed and replied, do not worry because we will not have ceviche again for a very long time. Senorita Jennifer, what would you like for lunch? I asked, do you know how to make a grilled cheese sandwich? Daniela answered, sorry, Senorita Jennifer, I do not know how to cook that. I smiled and said, why don't I teach you, and it's even better if we have it with cream of tomato soup. Daniela affirms, soup I can make. I reply, I bet we have some canned or instant soup. Let's go to the kitchen and look for it. I began to search the pantry and sure enough, I found a can of cream of tomato soup. I headed to the stove, opened the can, dumped it into a pan, added milk, not water, and began to heat the soup. I asked, Daniela, will you please stir the soup while I make the sandwiches? She took over the stirring of the soup while I got some bread from our bread box, cheese and butter from the refrigerator, a frying pan, and spatula. I put a good-sized dollop of butter in the frying pan, put it on the stove, and began to heat it. I positioned some cheese slices on the bread and then placed them into the frying pan. They began to sizzle and smelled wonderful. I checked using the spatula, and the first side was done, so I flipped them over and cooked the second side. I looked at Daniela and said, "We're ready to eat." Daniela put the soup into some bowls, and I put the sandwiches on the plates. We took them to the kitchen table and began to eat. I remarked, "I like to dip the sandwich in the soup like this." Daniela tried it, then smiled and said, "Yes, this is very good. Thank you for teaching me another America food." Flashback, Alexei at home. With dinner being complete, I stated, "Father, I'm going back to my room to continue to work on my classes." Father cautioned me, "Remember, you promised not to get too far ahead." I lied when I replied, "Don't worry, Father, I won't." I went back to my room where I finished calculus along with all my other classes. Father came in and said, "Good night, my son, sleep well." I smiled at him and knew I would. The only problem I would have would be what to do with all my time tomorrow. Flashback, Ira and Mira, continuing. I pleaded with Kostia, "I will do anything if you provide medical care for my sister." Kostia laughed evilly and replied, "Irina, you are already doing anything and everything that we want." I tried to reason, but I don't do it willingly. Kostia and the other men laughed. Then Kostia admitted, "And to be truthful, it's more enjoyable for us when you fight." He looked at the other men and asked, "Do you all agree?" They all agreed, and then began to additionally torture me. Flashback, Todd, on the mission. I used my time to make plans. First, I needed to ship the required items to Roberto, but I had to do this without letting the company know that I was back in America. I had a couple of friends who I trusted, and I needed to stop by and visit with them to kick things off. I needed to take all the supplies I would ever need and place them into the diplomatic container I sent to Roberto. After I destroyed the company, I would probably no longer have access to many of the items. I thought about what my life had become and how terrible it was that I had been betrayed by the company. I thought of their first betrayal, about my time on the island and my lost love Lou. I still wondered if I should return to the island. But then I remembered Maria and Gail and the new life I had started with them. It was certainly not planned, but I did make promises to them that I had to keep. How did my life become so complicated? I realized that I did it to myself when I let myself develop love towards them. I made a huge decision. I needed to guard my heart better. I couldn't afford to ever fall in love. Present, Ben, calling Tom. I can't believe Tom called Inga with news about Jens, but didn't bother to tell anyone how she is, so I decide to call the old scumsucker and find out myself. I place the call. Tom answers and says, "Ben, isn't it great news about Jennifer?" I reply, "Of course it's great news. But how is she doing, and what's the news on my children?" Tom says, "Ben, she has some lacerations on her wrist from fighting the tie wrap they restrained her with, and she's more pissed than I have ever seen. The only thing we know is that James and Fiona were transferred to another vehicle. Jennifer is on her way back to the cabin via the CSHB and should be there soon." Gretchen alerts over the comm unit. There's a truck approaching the front gate. I know who it is, so I reply over the comm. That's the contractor who is going to replace the front door. "Front gate, please let him through." The two guards open the front gate. He drives up to the house, exits his truck, and starts. "Ben, I'm sorry to hear about what happened. I was getting tired of this, but I didn't want to offend him, so I said, 'Mark, don't worry about it. Your door worked fine, but they blasted it to get in the cabin. And Jens has been released already and should be here soon.'" Inga and the FBI bomb agent showed up, and he asked the contractor, "If you can remove the door without much damage, I would appreciate it. We're taking it to Denver for analysis." Mark replied, "I won't damage it at all because I'm using a concrete saw to cut out the old door, and then I need to modify the concrete logs for the new door. Then I have to patch up the concrete logs so they look undamaged." The FBI agent remarks, "If you don't mind, I would like to watch." Mark agrees and begins to work on the door. I like Mark because he does good work and thinks of things most contractors don't. First, he puts up plastic sheeting on the inside of the house to control the dust. Then he marks a line about an inch outside of the current door frame. When he brings out the concrete saw, he hands us hearing protectors. He places the saw on the concrete, and the sparks begin to fly. He gets partway through the process and motions for me to hold up the door. I move over and hold the door while he continues. Another few minutes, and he's done. We take off our hearing protectors, and the FBI agent asks, "Do you mind if we wrap the door in some of your plastic sheeting?" Mark answers, "No problem." Mark lays some sheeting out on the ground, then he and I manhandle the door to the sheeting and wrap it up. Mark looks at the FBI agent and says, "You're going to need a truck and several people to move the door." The agent asks, "Could you do that for me?" Mark replies, "Sorry, I'm going to be busy putting in the new door." While the old door came out easily, the new door takes more time because I have to get the concrete just right. The agent asks, "Would the door fit in a van?" Mark answers, "Yeah, if you put it on edge it would, but it would also need to be a heavy-duty van or you could overload it. The door and concrete weigh about 400 pounds. The agent looks at me and, sounding more helpless by the minute, asks, Do you think the Marshal Services van would work? I nod my head and reply, it should if Inga will let you use it. The agent leaves, and Mark complains, typical government, wanting us to take care of the door for him. Inga and the agent return, and Inga asks, Ben, can you help get the door into my van? I'm saved when Gretchen announces, Ben, a CSHB vehicle is approaching the gate. I look at Inga and reply, sorry, but Jens is here, and I need to be with her. However, you have enough FBI agents, so they should be able to load it in your van. The CSHB vehicle drives up to the house, stops. Jens jumps out of the back, and we hug like the first time we ever hugged. I hold her as she begins to cry. Ben, they took Fiona and James, our babies. I kiss away the tears and promise, we will get them back. Inga interrupts. Ms. Blaine, I would like to hypnotize you to see if you can remember anything. Jens boldly announces, Inga, you can question me, however, I will not allow myself by be subjected to hypnotization. She leans close to me and whispers, Ben, they were witches who took us. I know because I remember their eyes. They were all violet. Destiny has returned to her human form, walks up and asks, Jennifer, why would they want to do that? Jens replies, I have no idea. I wish that grandmother was still around so I could ask her. Present, Mabel, Liz, Bernie, and Desiree, in the kitchen. I look at Desiree and remark, you have certainly grown up to be a pretty young lady. Desiree replies, thank you, Ms. Mabel, but I do not remember you. I smile at her and say, your mother and father lived here for some time after you were born. In fact, there were times that I was the only one who could get you to stop crying. She looks at Liz and asks, Mama, is that true? I thought I was a good baby. Liz smiles and says, Desiree, you were a good baby, but even good babies cry sometimes. Desiree remarks, I remember when Fiona and James were born they cried sometimes too. I hope they are not crying now. I ask, why would they be crying now? Desiree replies, because the bad men took them and their mama. Mabel has a shocked look on her face, so I explain, Mabel, Desiree figured out that with all the federal people here that Jens and the kids weren't on vacation, but instead were kidnapped. Desiree complains, Mama should know better than to tell lies, especially to me, because I figure things out. Mabel explains, Desiree, sometimes adults tell little lies to keep their children from worrying. Desiree began to argue, then Jens walks into the kitchen. I run over, hug her, and remark, I didn't know you were here. Jens hugs me back and says, I just arrived thanks to the highway patrol who brought me here. Desiree jumps up and down and asks, where are Fiona and James? Jens begins to cry and says, they still have them. I hug Jens, look at Bernie and ask, honey, please take Desiree to our old room. Desiree says, I know, this is time for adult conversation. Bernie leaves the kitchen with Desiree and Mabel swears, those scumsuckers kept your children. Why would they do that? Jens says, sorry Mabel, I don't really want to talk about this right now. Wait, what are you doing here? Mabel says, Miss Jennifer, I'm here to help by cooking until you no longer need me. Jens continues to cry, and through her tears she says, thank you, Mabel, for your help. Mabel remarks, I'm not the only one who came back. Gretchen is here, and so are the twins. Jens stops crying, looks amazed, and says, I didn't see them when I came in. Ben walks into the kitchen, hears Jens' response, and explains, yes, my love. They are here and are patrolling the area. Jens says, that makes me feel better already. Ben continues, Jens, my love, the new front door has been installed. Would you care to inspect the work? Jens slumps down into a chair, in obvious depression, and replies, not really, Ben. Ben says, Jens, I would like to spend some time with you in our room. Jens reluctantly gets up from the chair and follows Ben to their room. Mabel remarks, that woman is in a world of hurt. I look at Mabel and affirm, yes, she is. I've seen Jens in many moods, but this might be the first time I've ever seen her depressed. Mabel remarks, well, I need to get busy cooking. With that comment, I leave to find Bernie and Desiree. Present, Stacy and Samantha, finishing lunch. Henri comes out of the kitchen and Stacy says, Le repas était excellent. The meal was excellent. Henri replies, merci, Mademoiselle Summers. Thank you, Miss Summers. I look at Stacy and remark, someday I would sure like to learn more languages. Stacy replies, well, with your dyslexia taken care of, it shouldn't be a problem. I forgot to mention, with Stacy's help, she hired an excellent teacher for me. I only have occasional problems with my dyslexia, mainly when I'm tired or upset. I ask, which language do you think I should learn first? Stacy surprises me when she suggests, I think that Spanish would be the first language you should learn. I mention, I thought you would suggest French. Stacy chuckles and explains, Spanish is the easiest language for English speakers to learn, and with it you will get an introduction to many words having a gender bias. Besides, Spanish is the second most popular language in the world, right behind Chinese. I giggle and reply, well, I sure don't want to speak Chinese. Stacy says, wise choice. Having to learn a new alphabet makes things more difficult. So, shall we find you a Spanish teacher? I agree. Sure, but I can pay for this if you want. Stacy counters, don't worry about it. I will offer Spanish lessons to all employees. She continues, well, I need to get back to work. I announce, I'm going to make dinner tonight. What time will you be home? Stacy still lived with me at the castle. Stacy replies, I should be finished about 7 if that's not too late. I smile at her and say, not at all. We begin to leave and Stacy suggests, why don't you pick up some beer from the brewery? I ask, so it's going to be a movie night? We usually had beer and watch movies at night. My phone rings, I look at it and comment, it's Liz, so I need to go. Stacy asks, mind if I kibitz on the conversation? I'm pretty sure it's something about the kidnapping, so I say, sorry Stacy, but this is private. Stacy doesn't argue and leaves. I will see you tonight at 7. I answer the call and Liz announces, Samantha, Jens has been released. The reporter in me immediately asks, and Fiona and James? Liz swears, no, the scumsuckers still have them. I was wondering if you should do a report on Jens. I reply, I will be right over. Present, Gretchen, the new front door. I've been keeping an eye on things and see the control panel light for the front door comes on. I call Inga on the comm and ask, Inga, did the front door get replaced? Inga laughs and says, damn, we can't get anything past you. I reply, that's right, I see and control everything. Then I order, we need to test the hand interface for the front door. Inga replies, it will have to wait because we're trying to get the old front door into my van. The FBI wants to take it and the blasting cap components to Denver for examination. I tease, so you're going to be stuck here? Inga replies, hell no. My man is coming up sometime tonight. I continue to tease, are you sure he's coming for you and not just for Mabel's cooking? Inga rudely says, screw you, Gretchen. I'm concerned I offended her, but then she chuckles and continues. However, I have to admit when I told Tom that Mabel was cooking again, he sure was quick when he said he'd be here for dinner. I reply, sorry if I offended you. Inga teased, so when are you going to get a man? I quickly answer, Inga, I have computers so I don't need a man. Ben interrupts, okay, you too. That's too much information. We both apologize, sorry we forgot this was an open channel. Present, Liz, Bernie, and Desiree, back in the room. I knew I would find Bernie and Desiree in our old room. I walk in and Bernie is regaling Desiree with stories about when she lived here with us. In typical Bernie fashion, he's exaggerating things. Desiree runs to me, hugs me and asks, Mama, is it true that Mr. Tom made this area just for me and it cost hundreds of dollars? I gave Bernie the look and reply, part of that story is correct. Mr. Tom did have this area made just for you, but I don't know how much it cost. Desiree looks at Bernie and says, I thought so. However, I will need to thank Mr. Tom for making this nice little area just for me. Is he going to be here tonight? I reply, yes, that's what I've heard. Desiree says, good. Now I can find out how much my little nook cost. Flashback, Tanya and Masha, the next day. Louise left for work after we ate our breakfast, and I was surprised by a knock on the door. I made sure Linda was safe, checked, and noticed it was Tanya. I opened the door, she walked in and announced, okay, Masha, I think you are all set up to teach self-defense and yoga to women. I sputtered, but, I'm not ready yet. I cannot afford to pay for this. Tanya continued. Masha didn't know, but I had received phone calls all morning from the women in the classes last night. The only complaints were the lack of yoga mats. So I got busy, found a storefront that would work, called some financially independent women, explained the situation to them, and they were more than happy to fund this endeavor. I explained to Masha, last night's classes were a huge success, and my phone has been ringing all morning long asking when the next class was going to be. So I took the initiative to set things up for you. I found a downtown storefront that should be perfect. Masha again interrupted. Tanya, I am sorry, but I cannot afford to pay for this. I held up my hand to silence her and finished. You didn't let me get to this part. I called some financial leaders of this city, and they are going to pay for everything. Masha asked, what will these financial leaders want in return for their support? I laughed and answered, nothing. Except for possibly attending the classes themselves. Masha tried to throw another monkey wrench in my plans. Tanya, how am I to get to class? After my last experience on the buses in this city, I would never take them, especially with Linda in my care. I smiled at Masha and asked, I see that you have a car, don't you drive? Masha replied, that is Jack's car, and I drove in Russia. However, I do not have a driver's license for the United States. I offered, well, that's an easy thing to fix. We can get you one today. Masha was going to complain again, so I nipped it in the bud by stating, Masha, do you want to do this or not? Last night you said you did, but now you seem to be trying to find every way in the world to not teach the classes. Masha apologized. I am sorry, Tanya, but I just didn't know this was going to happen so quickly. I am in shock. I also apologized. I'm sorry, Masha, if I overstepped my bounds, but but if you had heard the praise from the women last night, you would have been excited too. Masha got a thoughtful look on her face and said, "This is good news, and it will certainly change my life. I will also need to clear this with Louise, because she is going back to school soon, and I have promised to continue to take care of Linda." I think for a moment and ask, "Do you know which school Louise is attending?" Masha shook her head and replied, "I have no idea." I explained, "If she attends the community college, then the storefront I found for you is close to the college." Masha suggested, "If the storefront isn't nearby, then I would suggest we find one close to the college. And then we could also offer classes to the college students." I asked, "Are you going to offer classes at night?" Masha reverted to the same thoughtful look from earlier and said, "I had not thought about that, but I do not think that would be possible. As it is, I'm wondering how I will eat and feed Linda at this facility." I palmed my face and said, "Masha, I don't know why I didn't come up with this idea earlier. We can set up a daycare service at the storefront." Masha became defensive and replied, "I am not sure I would want Linda exposed to that many other children." I modified my idea slightly. Then we could make it a daycare only for the women attending the classes. That would also solve a large problem for those attending. Masha asked, "What did the women who came to the class last night do with their children?" I explained, "The ones who didn't have spouses took them to a daycare." Masha thought some more and asked, "Did most of the women who came last night have jobs?" I confirmed, "That's correct, most of them did." Masha said, "Then we would need to offer the yoga classes early in the morning and the Krav Maga classes over lunch or in the early evening. I think I would like to see this storefront you found." I asked, "Do you have a car seat for Linda?" Masha answered, "Of course we do. Let me make sure she's cleaned up, ensure the diaper bag is ready, and then we can go." I gave one last bit of information. "We caught John Rowe in the sting we were planning, so I don't think he will bother you again." Masha remarked, "That is very good news. Is he going to spend time in prison?" I replied, "No, Masha, but his wife threw him out of the house and filed for divorce." Masha remarked, "I hope he doesn't blame me." Flashback, Jack and Ben, midnight requisition run. I sent Ben off to make sure the night patrol was all awake, and so I could talk to Colonel Maggie in private. At first, Colonel Maggie wasn't happy that Ben and I were leaving at the same time, so I explained, "Sir, Ben is in a world of hurt because the Taliban killed the remainder of the children. Hell, sir, he even talked about going to the CIA. I thought this mission would be an excellent distraction for him." Colonel Maggie thought for a short time and replied, "Jack, I'm going to authorize this mission as long as both of you are back at the hospital by morning." I asked, "Sir, how are we to get to Boo?" Colonel Maggie replied, "We will send a chopper for you along with the medical supplies the doctors requested. It should arrive in about 30 mics." I thanked Colonel Maggie. "Thank you, sir. I've never seen Ben like this before." Colonel Maggie said, "Jack, this had better fix his attitude because I'm starting to get pissed at him." I assured her, "Sir, I'm sure he will be fine after this." I hoped like hell this fixed Ben because he'd pushed the hell out of Colonel Maggie. Ben finally came into the comm room and asked. I knew Jack didn't want me around when he talked to Colonel Maggie. Normally I would have given him shit about it, but because of the way I felt, it wasn't worth it. All I wanted to do was leave this hospital and never come back. I walked into the comm room and asked, "Jack, did she give us approval?" Jack smiled at me and replied, "Of course she did. We just have to be back by morning." I smiled at Jack and asked, "Are you sure we can be back by morning?" Jack said, "Well, we didn't have any problems last time. By the way, a chopper is coming to pick us up in." He checked his watch and continued, "In about 25 mics." I suggested, "We should grab some weapons just in case." Jack agreed and teased, "Yeah, I was heading out to get my M25. Are you taking a mouse gun?" I countered, "Keep it up and I will confiscate the Night Force scope I put on your M25. Jack complained, "Damn, you sure are pissy about things lately." I agreed, "That's right, and I don't know when I'm going to get better, so get used to it." We heard the chopper coming onto the roof, so we hightailed it up to the roof after grabbing our weapons. Flashback, Jennifer at home. Daniela asked, "Senorita Jennifer, what are your plans for the afternoon?" I really wanted to study more, but instead I said, "I'm not sure what I want to do. Did you have something in mind?" Daniela smiled and answered, "I thought we could take a walk together." I smiled and replied, "That sounds like a great idea. Let me go upstairs and put on my running shoes." Daniela cautioned, "Senorita Jennifer, I do not want to run, but only to walk fast." I looked at her shoes. They had about a 4-inch heel on them, and complained, "Daniela, if we are going to walk much, you need better shoes for that than those you are wearing." Daniela confessed, "Senorita Jennifer, these are the only shoes I have." I was surprised, so I inquired, "What size do you wear?" Daniela replied, "I wear a 38. We went to the computer, started it, and logged in. I checked and said, "That's what I thought. We were the same size shoe. I have a pair of old running shoes that would probably work better than the shoes you are wearing." Daniela complained, "Senorita Jennifer, I could not take your old shoes." I smiled at her and countered, "Don't tell me this is some sort of weird Peruvian thing." Because if we're going for a walk, you are going to wear my old shoes. Daniela relented. Okay, Senorita Jennifer, but please do not tell anyone as I would be embarrassed. I grinned at her and said, don't worry about it. My lips are sealed. I ran upstairs, changed my shoes, grabbed my old running shoes for Daniela, and then ran back downstairs. I handed her the shoes, but she took one look at them and complained, Senorita Jennifer, these shoes are an ugly color. They were a nice shade of blue. I pointed to my new shoes and said, would you rather have green shoes like these? Daniela replied, certainly not. I would look like a payaso. I frowned and asked, what is a payaso? Daniela said, they are the characters in funny clothes and big shoes. I figured it out and replied, so you mean a clown? Are you saying I look like a clown? Daniela backpedaled, no, Senorita Jennifer, for a young girl from Estados Unidos they are fine. But for an older Peruvian woman, we would never wear zapatos verdes. I teased, I think I need to tell Jed that you need zapatos verdes running shoes. Daniela was aghast and said, please, Senorita Jennifer, do not do that. It would be terrible. I laughed, so put on my old shoes and stop complaining. Daniela complied. We went for the walk and had a great time. Daniela pointed to many things and told me the Spanish names. I taught her the English words for them. She finally said, Senorita Jennifer, thank you for making me change my shoes as these are much more comfortable. Flashback, Alexei at home. Father left for work the next day not knowing I had completed all my university work. He said, Alexei, have a good day at home and do not get too far ahead with your work. I lied. Okay, Father, have a good day at work. He drove away in the car, but I was bored and tried to watch TV, but it was even more boring. I looked at the money I had and made a decision. I phoned a taxi and had them take me to the university where I met with my teachers during their office hours. They were surprised that I had finished all my lessons with no errors so rapidly, and I was able to convince them to give me several weeks of lessons. I was even able to convince one of them to drive me home so I didn't have to use a taxi. However, I wasn't sure if Father was going to be happy or angry with me tonight when I told him what I had done. Flashback, Ira and Mira, continuing. The brutes not only continued to torture me, they continued the torture of my sister Mira even with her being without consciousness. So I insulted them. You told me it was better if we fought, so why do you continue to torture my sister? Kostia sneered, because we can, and because it bothers you. Perhaps if you fought harder we would leave Miranda alone. So I struggled more, and they did leave my sister alone. Flashback, Todd, on the mission. The plane touched down on the first of several legs of my flight. As I walked off the flight, I made sure no one noticed me. I walked up to the ticket counter and bought a ticket for my next leg. There was a 3-hour wait for the flight, so I headed to a lounge to relax and get something to eat. The food was passable, but was made better by an excellent beer. Destiny asks, Ben, may I follow you two to your room? I mention, Destiny, I was going to have a conversation with Jens. Destiny continues, Ben, I might have an idea about Jennifer's grandmother and a possible way to contact her. Jens says, that would be great if you could. Ben, please let Destiny accompany us to our room. I agree, but with a request. Destiny, please give us about 10 minutes before you come in. Destiny whispers to me, Ben, don't be too hard on her. I whisper back, Destiny, I have no plans of doing that. I just want to let her know that things will be fine and that she's loved. Destiny says, I will see you in 10 minutes. What I didn't tell Destiny was I knew my wife and she needed to cry and vent some anger about this situation. Jens and I get into the room, I hug her, and she says, I'm glad that Ben made Destiny wait, even though I seriously want to hear her ideas. I hug Ben, begin to cry and apologize. Honey, I'm sorry that I let our babies be taken. Ben consoles, Jens, it's not your fault. I'm to blame for relaxing the security around here. Jens counters, Ben, no one could expect something like this to happen. I have never heard of witches stealing babies. Even if we would still have had the security in place, I'm not sure it would have helped against the witches. Ben asks, Jens, how are your wrists? I hold them up and say, they hurt like hell. I was glad they used ropes on our babies. Ben remarks, Jens, that's a good sign that they don't want Fiona and James to be injured. I was going to continue when Destiny knocks on the door and says, it's been 10 minutes. Ben replies, come on in and let's hear your ideas. We are ready to start when Mabel announces over the intercom, lunch is being served in the dining room. Destiny says, Ben and Jennifer, you need to eat to keep up your strength. When we are done eating, we will come back and discuss my ideas. The three of us leave for the dining room. Present, Mabel and everyone else, lunchtime. Somehow Gretchen is the first into the dining room. She asks, is there anything I can do to help? I smile at her and suggest, I could use someone to help serve if you don't mind. Gretchen replies, no problem at all. Then she rubs her hands together and continues, what's for lunch today? I reply, my world-famous jambalaya, made with chicken and andouille sausage. Gretchen questions, is it spicy? I clarify, I toned it down, but there I do have some spices that you can add. Ben, Jennifer, and Destiny walk into the dining room. Ben smells the air and says, Mabel, you made jambalaya. I correct. No, I made my world-famous jambalaya. Gretchen adds, and she has spices to make it even better. I state. However, knowing Ben's penchant for spicy food, I might not have anything hot enough for him. Ben politely asks, Mabel, if it wouldn't offend you, I might add some Tabasco to it. I reply, the only thing I ask is that you try it the way it is first before you adulterate it. Ben replies, yes, Mabel, I always try the food first before adding anything to it. Gretchen says, you three go ahead and sit, and I will bring you your food. They take their seats as everyone else comes into the dining room. I announce, find a place to sit and Gretchen will bring you your food. Ingo offers, Mabel, I would like to help serve too. I reply, the more the merrier. I would never tell Tom, because working together as a team has been great and really cemented our relationship. However, I really miss the time I had at Stacy's restaurant. Now I have a chance to fulfill that happiness again. Everyone sits and Gretchen and I fight over who is going to serve the FBI and others. We're back in the kitchen and Gretchen confronts, Inga, why are we fighting over who is serving? I confess, Gretchen, I really miss when I did this at Stacy's restaurant. Gretchen laughs and says, Inga, I didn't realize that. Let me take a seat and you can handle all the serving. That made me really happy. Gretchen sat down and I moved my ass out of the kitchen to the dining room, carrying multiple bowls of the jambalaya simultaneously. Mabel asked, what happened to Gretchen? I replied, she's letting me do my old job. Mabel remembers, that's right, you used to be Henry's waitress. I smile at her and say, yes, I really love that job, however I would not trade it for the life I have now with Tom. Mabel comments, I never thought you two would stay together. I confirm, neither did I. I assumed that once Tom and I became lovers I was going to leave him. However, he was such a good lover, I decided to stay. Mabel scoffs, I can't believe Tom would be that good. Inga informs us, Mabel, I have had a few lovers, but none even came close to Tom. Mabel says, now, if you could get him to marry you. I express my frustration by my reply, Mabel, Tom continues to think he's too old for me. Mabel suggests, perhaps you've made things too comfortable for Tom. I question, what do you mean? Mabel explains, many times men do not buy the cow, not implying that you're a cow, when the milk is free. I continue to serve the food as I think upon Mabel's idea. Present, Samantha, interviewing Jennifer. I arrive at the cabin and find everyone eating. Inga approaches me and asks, would you like something to eat? I reply, no thank you. I just ate at the restaurant. I walk over to the table where Ben, Jennifer, and Destiny are sitting and ask, I would like to interview Jennifer about her return. Destiny informs me, Samantha, you will need to wait until we discuss some things after we are finished with lunch. I was not happy about it. However, I understood that many things were happening right now, and I also remembered how easily Destiny broke Bill's arm. So I reply, just so you know, I am here and will wait as long as is needed. Jennifer says, thank you, Samantha, for waiting. We have some important things to discuss. Present, Stacy, after lunch. I arrive back at the office and question Bill. Do we have any idea about who kidnapped the Blaines? Bill falters and asks, Miss Summers, I thought we weren't going to investigate this? I wave my hand dismissively and state, I was more interested in who did this than in Ms. Blaine and her children. Bill informs me, Miss Summers, Ms. Blaine has been released already. I demand, why didn't you inform me earlier? Bill waffles, Ms. Summers, I'm trying to protect you from any information concerning them. I order, Bill, I need every iota of information concerning this. From now on you will provide it. Properly chastised, Bill replies, yes, Ms. Summers. Flashback, Masha and Tanya, the next day. Linda is dressed and in her car seat. The diaper bag is ready, so I look at Tanya and announce, now we are ready to see this storefront. Tanya cautions, Masha, please realize that the building hasn't been prepared in any way. I question, Tanya, what do you mean? Tanya explains, Masha, this is just a raw storefront and hasn't been modified in any way. It was a store, so it might seem to be unsuitable for your classes. I know you will need to have many modifications for the Krav Maga and yoga classes. With some trepidation, I loaded Linda, with her car seat, into the back of Tanya's car and then acquired the front seat. Tanya said, Masha, I really meant what I said. Do not judge the storefront yet. The women I mentioned earlier will gladly pay for the upgrades. I replied with some concern, Tanya, I do not want to owe these women my life. Tanya laughed and made me feel better. Masha, you will not owe these women anything other than possibly free classes. Let me help you to understand. They are concerned about the other women of this community and want to give them the opportunity of protecting themselves. I emphatically stated, that is good because I will not be owned by anyone. Tanya replied, Masha, trust me. I do not want you owned by anyone either. I was satisfied, finally, that I was not going to be in debt to anyone. Tanya continued to drive to the storefront. We finally arrived, and I inquired, Tanya, what is that large building? Tanya replied, Masha, that is the community college I told you about. Now shall we examine this storefront and see if it will work? A different woman met us at the storefront, and Tanya explained, Masha, this is the realtor who is responsible for showing us this property. Now when we enter the storefront, I want you to tell me what needs to be changed to prepare it for your use. The realtor lady unlocked the door and said, this is a prime piece of property in this area. I did not care for that comment because I felt she would want more money for this property than was warranted. Even though I was not paying for it, I still needed to be careful with money. I walked into the storefront, found there was a large counter in the middle of the room, and I stated, Tanya, the counter will need to be removed. Tanya had taken out a tablet and began taking notes. I glanced around the walls and continued, the 3 side walls. I pointed at each one and continued. Will need to be covered with full-length mirrors. The back wall will need to be left plain, however this terrible color will need to be replaced. It was an offensive shade of purple. I continued, I will need Krav Maga training mats that cover the majority of the floor, which can be replaced by yoga mats. The floor should be covered in wood, or at least parquet. I examined the front door and remarked, this door and lock are not suitable. I need a solid door akin to the door on my house and a deadbolt lock. Finally, I stated, I will need to work with a graphic artist to design the flyers we need for the classes. Tanya asked, when are you planning on offering the classes? I replied, I do not know yet because I need to discuss this with Louise first. Tanya suggested, could we go to the grocery store and talk to Louise now? I thought briefly and said, that would be acceptable, if we do not bother her too much. I had taken Linda, in her car seat, into the storefront, so I grabbed her car seat, and we headed to Tanya's car where I put Linda into the back passenger side seat. Flashback, Jack and Ben, midnight requisition run. We hauled ass to the roof just in time. The UH-60 Blackhawk had dumped the medical supplies and was getting ready to leave. We reached the side door, jumped inside, and the door gunner complained, I didn't know we had passengers to take back with us. Ben barked, what you do now, Corporal? Do you have any problems with that? I tried to calm things down. The colonel gave us permission. You can check with her if you would like. He backpedaled. No, that's okay. I leaned close to Ben and gave him some shit. What the hell is wrong with you? Ben snapped back. Nothing the hell is wrong with me, Jack, so back off or else. I sure didn't think Ben would still be so messed up by the children, but I did listen to his advice and didn't bother him for the rest of the trip to the boo. It was a short flight to the boo. When the UH-60 touched down, we jumped out and Ben asked, so what's the first thing we need to do? I replied, we should check with John and see if the semi is empty. If it is, it saves us from borrowing another one. We headed to the mess hall, found John there, and he said, Jack, it's good to see you. I was going to call you because the semi is practically empty. I smiled and said, I figured as much, and we're here to make another midnight requisition run. John looked at Ben and said, you're Ben. I've heard all about you. Thankfully, Ben didn't say anything abrasive this time. He only said, well, let's get this show on the road. We headed over to the semi. I climbed into the driver's seat, and Ben complained, Jack, there's no way in hell I'm letting you drive this rig. So get your ass back out of there and let me do the driving. I decided not to make a big deal out of it, so I climbed back out. Ben climbed in the driver's seat, began the startup procedure, and stated, damn, Jack, this rig is about out of fuel. John suggested, I have some friends in the motor pool who will be more than happy to fill this up. I said, let's meet these friends of John's. When we got close to the motor pool, John said, let me out here. Ben stopped the semi. John bailed out, walked up to the motor pool guards, and in a couple of minutes we were waved through the gate. The guard motioned for Ben to stop. He did and rolled down the window. The guard pointed and said, the fuel tanks are over there. John walked in the indicated direction as Ben cranked the wheel and followed him. We arrived at the fuel tanks. John did some more talking, and they motioned for Ben to pull beside the tanks. Ben remarked, damn, Jack, they do everything for John. I replied, that's right. When Lieutenant George couldn't get more staff for the hospital, I called John, and he got the staff dispatched immediately. I chuckled and continued, yeah, since John's cooking has improved so much, no one wants to piss him off. I suggested, let's step out and walk around while they are fueling the semi. We're going to sit enough tonight. It didn't take long until the semi was fueled. Ben and John climbed back in. Ben started it up, spun the wheel, and we were off again. Flashback, Jennifer, after the walk. We arrived back home, and Daniela remarked, thank you, Senorita Jennifer, for the walk. Now if I do that every day, I will lose the weight I have gained. I hated to burst her bubble, but I told her, 2 things, Daniela. First, the walk was too slow to burn off many calories, and second, the amount of food you eat has more bearing on your weight than anything else. Daniela dejectedly sat in the chair, took off my running shoes, and said, I do not think there is any hope that I will ever lose this weight. I countered, Daniela, that's not true at all. We just need to walk faster the next time and cut the numbers of calories you eat at each meal. A typical woman of your age and activity level burns about 1,500 calories a day. It takes 3,500 calories to produce 1 pound of fat, so if we cut your food by 300 calories a day, you would lose a little more than a half a pound a week. Daniela tries to hand back my old running shoes, and I complain, "What are you doing? I gave those to you, and I'm not going to take them back." She begins to complain, and I nip it in the bud. "Daniela, I order you to wear the running shoes today while you work." She begins to complain, so I ask, "Daniela, who do you work for?" She replies, "Senor Donaldson." I continue with the questions, "And if he's not here, who do you work for?" Daniela said, "Senora Donaldson." She was being difficult, but I wasn't going to give up, "And if neither of them are here?" Daniela replied, "Then of course I work for you." I repeat, "Now you will wear the running shoes all day to work in. Then I add a carrot on a stick, and if you do that, then we will go for another walk later." Daniela finally relents. "Okay, Senorita Jennifer." Flashback, Alexei, father arrives home. I decided to make dinner tonight and finish preparations right as father arrived home in a great mood. He told me all about his new job and how much he liked it. I told him, "Sit down, father, I made dinner tonight." He sat at the table where I served him a plate of macaroni and cheese mixed with hot dogs. Once we began to eat, he asked, "So Alexei, how did your homework go today?" I gave father a serious look and confessed, "Father, I hope you will not be angry with me. I finished all my homework last night and took a taxi to school today and met with my teachers during their office hours. They reviewed my work, which was perfect, and assigned me many more weeks of homework. I know I shouldn't have left the house without your permission, but I hope you do not punish me." Father smiled at me and said, "Alexei, that was a very adult thing to do. I am of course concerned that you left the house without telling me, but this solves the problem of me having to take you to school on Fridays. The next time you want to leave the house, you must first call me at work." I promised, "Yes, father. I will make sure to do that from now on. So am I free to continue taking a taxi to the university for my lessons?" Father answered, "Of course, let me know how much it costs and I will pay for it." It was a good night for both of us. Flashback, Ira and Mira, continuing. Finally, the brutes had exhausted themselves and collapsed upon the ground. I used this opportunity to move beside my sister Mira and check on her. Thank God, even after the brutalization, she was still alive. I gently shook her. She woke and I whispered, "Mira, we must make our escape now." I was shocked when Mira whispered in return, "Not until these animals face terminal retribution." She took up one of the AKs, placed it in full auto mode, and emptied the magazine into the sleeping animals. I grabbed another AK, and we made our escape as Kostia shouted behind us, "We will catch you again, and it will be even worse next time." Mira swore, "I will never allow those female Seleucus to catch me again. I will expire first." Flashback, Todd, on the mission. I needed to make sure not to drink so much that it would impair me during the upcoming mission, but since I did have 3 hours to burn, I had one more beer. Finally, the time came for the flight. I walked up to the gate, showed them my neck, and received preferential boarding. This leg of my trip wasn't going to take as long, so there wasn't even food service. Ben, Jens, and Destiny in the dining room. Samantha comes up and interrupts lunch wanting an interview. We explain that we have an important discussion with Destiny after lunch and ask her to wait until we are finished with our meeting. She doesn't seem happy about the wait, but she looks at Destiny and relents. She moves to a table with the FBI agents and Destiny comments, "Samantha is afraid of me ever since I broke Bill's arm." Jens laughs and adds, "From what I heard, you snapped it like a twig." I taunt Destiny, "Why the hell didn't you ever teach me that move?" She emphatically replies, "Ben, you are dangerous enough without knowing that move." Jens complains, "You could have at least taught me how to do it." Destiny smiles and replies, "No, then you would have used it on Mira or Ira and that would have caused a blood feud. Now finish your meals so we can have our meeting." Jens finally notices and comments, "Ben, you didn't add any Tabasco to the jambalaya." I reply, "That's right, because it would have ruined the subtle flavor of the jambalaya. This has to be the best jambalaya I have ever tasted." We finish, stand up, head to Samantha's table, and Destiny says, "We will call you on the intercom when we are finished." Again, Samantha frowns, but doesn't complain. We head to our room and Destiny explains, "Ben and Jennifer, because Ben is a shaman." I correct her, "Shaman in training." Destiny continues, "We should be able to combine the spirituality aspect of the shaman with the witch's skill to summon Jennifer's grandmother." I ask, "How in the hell are we supposed to do that?" Destiny continues, "Ben, you and Jennifer need to have a sweat lodge experience." I comment, "Like when I found you as my spiritual animal." Destiny smiles and says, "That's right. From what I understand, you and Jennifer were destined for each other, so that there could be a gateway between the spiritual realms of shaman and witches." Jens asks, "So how do we do this?" Destiny says, I think you will discover the method while you participate in the sweat lodge. However, I suggest that you give Samantha her interview first. I complain, damn, I hate interviews. Jens says, Ben, this is going to be hard enough without your bad attitude. I apologize, sorry Jens, I will fix my attitude. Destiny says, I will go and get the sweat lodge ready. Jens and I walk over to Samantha's table. She looks up at us, and I say, we're ready for our interview. Present, Samantha, interviewing Jennifer and Ben. I say, great, let me find John the cameraman. Ben suggests, Bernie is here, and I know he's been doing some camera work for Liz. I shoot that down with a remark, sorry, but Bernie only works with Liz. Jens notices John, points him out, and says, Samantha, he's over there. I catch John's attention. He approaches and asks, are we ready? Ben replies, as ready as we ever will be. Where would you like to do this? I say, your bedroom is probably not a good idea. Do you have any other rooms available? Ben laughs and answers, we have more rooms here than we know what to do with. How about we use the small office? We head to the small office, enter the room, and I say, this won't do at all. We need a larger room. Bernie, Liz, and Desiree come up, and Desiree suggests, if you need a bigger room, why don't you use our bedroom? Now that the pig's eye is gone, it would work great. Liz explains, Desiree means pigsty. The room was a bit of a mess when we first arrived. Jens apologizes, sorry about that, you three. I have been busy being a mother and sort of let some of the rooms go. Desiree comes up with another of her comments that practically had us rolling on the floor. Oh, the pig didn't go duty in our room. If he had, it would have been GROSS. I suggest, well, let's take a look at this room. We all head to Liz and Bernie's old current room. Desiree opens the door like she owns the place, points and announces, that is the little nook that Mr. Tom made just for me. He spent about $1 million gazillion on it. Liz quickly complains, Desiree, what have I told you about lying? Desiree replies and justifies her statement. Okay, so it was probably several $100s, but to me that's close to $1 million gazillion. I say, this room will work great. We will just need to bring in some chairs. Ben offers, I will be right back with them. Bernie, can you give me a hand? Bernie and Ben leave their room as Ben remarks, Desiree really cracks me up with her comments. But it makes me miss the hell out of Fiona and James. They head into the dining room, swipe 3 chairs, and leave before the FBI agents figure out something else for them to do. They return with the chairs, and Desiree practically begs, Ms. Stevens, would it be possible to have my little nook in the background of the interview? If you were to put it in the background, then you could interview me about the nook when you were done. Liz says, Desiree, I'm not sure people would be interested in that. Liz notices me holding up my hand to stop as I say, Desiree, I think that is an excellent idea. I begin to position the chairs with Desiree's help, which takes forever. Once all are happy, I look at Desiree and state, you have to be totally quiet now. She affirms by nodding her head, and I begin, hello America. I'm Samantha Stevens with the Truth Network, bringing you an update on the kidnapping of Jennifer Blaine and her 2 lovely children. As you can see, because she is sitting here, we are thankful that Jennifer Blaine has been released. Ms. Blaine, what can you tell us about your ordeal? Jens steels herself and begins. Thank you, Samantha, and also America, for all your prayers. It all happened so fast here at the house that I didn't even have time to react. I ask, is it true they were wearing masks? Jens replies, yes, they all wore wolf masks, so we couldn't recognize them. I continue the questions. How did they get into the house? Ben answers, our front door is impregnable to normal attacks, so they used explosives to breach it. I continue, Ms. Blaine, I notice you have bandages on your wrists. Jens holds up her arms and comments, yes, they used an electrical tie wrap to secure my wrists and I damaged them some trying to escape. I comment, I sure hope they didn't use those on your children. Jens answers, no, they used rope on them. I ask, was anyone else injured in the kidnapping? Ben replies, Glenn Donaldson, Fiona and James's grandfather, was hit over the head with a rifle and it left a large cut on top of his head. I looks at Ben and ask, Mr. Blaine, I understand you weren't here at the time. He replies, that's correct, I was walking in the woods with my friend Destiny. I smile at the camera and conclude the interview. America, there is some good news about this mess, however the kidnappers still hold the Blaine children. With the interview done, Desiree approaches me and asks, Miss Stevens, are we going to do my interview now? Liz gives me a look, which I ignore, and say, certainly. Do you know what you want to talk about? Desiree pauses, thinks for a moment, and then suggests, we could talk about how this was my special area when I was a baby. She looks at Liz and asks, Mama, do we still have my old crib here? She shakes her head no and replies, sorry Desiree, it was moved to our new house. I say, Desiree, if you remember it from your new house you can describe it for me. Desiree announces, of course I remember it. We converted it into my bed. I nod to John. He begins to roll the camera and I start the interview. Good morning America. Today we are going to have a special interest piece. We are going to interview Desiree Townsend, the daughter of Liz Morgan and Bernie Townsend. Desiree, what information can you give me about the area behind you? Desiree smiles big for the camera and says, when I was first born, I lived here with Mama and Papa, and this little nook behind me held my crib. Do you notice the nice paintings of the flowers on the wall? Maybe that's why I love flowers so much today. I ask, do you know who had the flowers painted on the wall? Desiree replies, I think it was the nice man, Mr. Tom. Liz corrects Desiree, Desiree, I painted the flowers on the wall. Desiree blushes and says, sorry, Mama, I thought it was Mr. Tom. It makes the flowers even more special because you did them just for me. I broach a subject I know Liz didn't want me to bring up. Desiree, you know that bad men have taken your two playmates Fiona and James. How do you feel about that? Desiree's eyes practically flash, and she declares, I am very angry about it. Fiona and James are my bestest friends, and I miss them very much. Those bad men had better not hurt them, or I will find them and get Papa to spank them. I close the interview by saying, thank you, Desiree, for sharing with us. I'm sure we will all be praying for Fiona and James. Flashback, Masha and Tanya, going to visit Louise at work. With Linda once again secure in Tanya's car, we drove to the market where Louise worked. We walked in and surprised Louise, so she asked, what are you two doing here? Tanya smiled and said, I've just shown Masha a potential storefront for her Krav Maga and yoga classes, and we have some questions for you. Louise replied, well, don't keep me waiting. Tanya asked, Masha mentioned that you were going to school at night. Are you going to Holbrook Community College? Louise said, that's the one. Why do you ask? Masha continues, Louise, the storefront is across the street from the community college. Louise remarks, that would be great. We could all go home together after my classes. I bring up one more concern. Louise, I am concerned that Linda will be exposed to germs from the other children who might be at the class. Louise answered, Masha, don't worry about Linda, she's pretty tough. I voice my final concern. The only other issue that I can see is how to feed Linda and myself for lunch. Tanya interjects, Masha, we will put in a small kitchen with a microwave. I frown and confess, Tanya and Louise, I have not mastered the workings of the American microwave ovens. Everything I prepare with microwave burns or comes out too dry. Tanya suggests, then we will add a real stove with an oven to the kitchen. That makes me feel better, so I looked at Louise and asked, well, how do you feel about this? She smiled, hugged me, and said, Masha, this is great. I never thought that you would get this going so quickly. I confess, it was Tanya's doing. She set all this up. Tanya said, after my phone was ringing off the hook this morning about last night's classes, I decided I needed to take the bull by the horns. I gave Louise a questioning glance, and she explained, Masha, taking the bull by the horns means taking charge of things. Then Louise came up with a question I forgot to ask. Masha, how are you and Linda going to get to work? Tanya replied, that's the next thing on our list of to-do items. We're going to get Masha a driver's license. Linda sighed and replied, phew, I thought you were going to take a bus. I replied, after my last bus trip, I would never subject Linda to that ordeal. Tanya remarked, Masha thought she would do a yoga class early in the morning, some classes over lunchtime, and then a few classes at night. I replied, I find that yoga in the morning is a good way to start the day, and perhaps we can have some later classes after school. Let's out for those women attending the community college. Tanya suggested, Masha, let's load up Linda and go get your driver's license. I hugged Louise goodbye. Linda waved and said, Mama, Mama, Mama. Louise gave her a big kiss, and we left to get my driver's license. On the way I asked, Tanya, are the driving tests different here than in Russia? Tanya laughed and said, yeah, they are probably easier here. You will see once you start driving. Almost any idiot can get a license in America. We went to the driver's license bureau where I took a number and began to wait. I noticed many people studying small books, so I asked Tanya, what are they studying? Tanya replied, that's the rules of the road booklet. Let me get one for you. She came back, handed it to me. I flipped it open and commented, Tanya, the signs are different than in Russia. So Tanya and I went through all the signs together until they made sense. Finally, my number was called. I walked up to the desk, and the person asked, do you have your old license? I handed her my Russian license. She took one look at it and commented, this might be the first Russian driver's license I have seen. She called to all the other clerks, hey, look at this. All the other desk workers came over and looked at my Russian driver's license. Then one of them realized who I was and said, hey, she's the woman Avenger the news has talked about. After that, I was a celebrity again, until one of the managers, whose name was Sally, came out and confronted the other women. What's going on? They said, this is the woman Avenger from the news. You know, the one who took down the bus gang and the ring. Sally walked up, shook my hand, and said, I want to personally thank you for all you've done for the women of the city. Tanya had joined me and remarked, Masha is planning on doing even more. She's going to open a yoga and Krav Maga studio close to Holbrook Community College. That's why she's here today, to get her driver's license, so she can drive to the studio. Sally said, well, I will let you take the written test in my office, and then I will do your driving test with you. Sally ushered me into her office, handed me the test, and remarked, if you have any questions on it, just let me know. I remarked, the signs are different in Russia. She interrupted, yes, they use the international signs, but if you have any problems on them, just let me know. Compared to the Russian test, this one was very easy, and it didn't take long. I finished, handed the manager my test, she graded it, and said, Masha, you made a perfect score. Now for the driving test. I queried, what is involved in the driving test? Sally smiled and said, we drive your car. I give you directions, and you follow them. I remarked, we brought Tanya's car today. Am I allowed to use it for the test? Sally replied, certainly. However, you cannot bring the baby with you. We walked out of Sally's office, approached Tanya, and I asked, may we use your car for the driver's test, and will you watch Linda while I do it? Tanya smiled and replied, certainly, but I think we need to change Linda first. I checked and affirmed the situation. You are correct. I will get the diaper bag. Tanya handed me her keys and whispered, Masha, make sure you adjust the seat and mirrors before you start the car. Then in her normal voice, I will follow you out to get the diaper bag. I unlocked the door, handed the diaper bag to Tanya, and Sally said, there are changing tables in the bathrooms, but they are never clean, so why don't you use the desk in my office? Tanya agreed. Thanks, I will do that, and make sure to remove the dirty diaper with me. I took the driver's seat, adjusted it so it fit me. Then I carefully adjusted the inside mirrors, but could not figure out the outside mirrors, so I asked, how do I adjust the outside mirrors? Sally said, on these newer cars you use the little joystick on the door, and the switch chooses which mirror. I found the joystick and carefully adjusted the driver's mirror, then switched to the passenger's mirror and adjusted it. I sat and waited. Sally asked, what are you waiting for? I explained that I was waiting for her to give me permission to start the car. Sally laughed and said, let's get this show on the road. Please start the car. I started the car and waited. Sally commanded, pull out of the parking lot and take a right turn. I followed the directions, came up to a stop sign, made a full stop, checked both directions and proceeded. The whole time Sally was writing on a piece of paper, and that made me a little nervous. Sally ordered, pull up to the light and take a left turn. I pulled up to the stoplight, noticed there was no turn arrow, so I patiently waited for the traffic light to change and then made a left turn. We approached some railroad tracks where I made sure to stop the car and again checked both directions before proceeding. We finally got back to the driver's license bureau, and Sally said, so far you've done perfect. Now you need to parallel park. Sally pointed and continued, you see those cones over there? You need to park between them. Many people are afraid of parallel parking, but it is just a formula. I pulled up about a half a meter from the cones, checked the mirrors to make sure my start position was perfect, turned the wheel hard to the right, and eased into the parking place. When my front door was even with the first cone, I began to straighten the wheel. Then, when the front wheels became even with the front cone, I turned the wheel to the left and straightened out as I approached the curb. I was finished, so I asked, what now, Sally? Sally said, congratulations, Masha, you passed. Most people don't stop at the railroad crossing, and you did. So let's get your picture taken and give you your new license. Tanya met us at the door and asked, well? Sally smiled and said, she did perfect. First they took me to a machine to check my eyesight. It was fine. Then they had me stand in front of a background and took my picture. Sally said, it will take about 15 minutes for your license. By the way, you will need to make sure you are added on your husband's car insurance policy. Tanya assured her, don't worry, I will make sure this is taken care of. The 15 minutes seemed to take forever. Then they finally gave me my license, and all the counter clerks clapped and congratulated me. Flashback, Jack and Ben, midnight requisition run. We headed back out of the motor pool, and Ben asked, okay, which way do we go? I replied, take a right and haul ass. Ben spun the wheel, snicked through the gears like he had driven semis all his life, and soon we were hauling ass and a half toward HQ. John mentioned, I heard that sometimes the Taliban plant IEDs along this road. Ben swore, Jack, why the hell didn't you tell me that? I replied, Ben, we had no issues at all last time. Besides, we will be back before the scumsuckers even wake up. I didn't think it was possible, but that made Ben haul ass even faster. John remarked, Ben sure drives this semi better than you did, Jack. Ben laughed and replied, Jack drives most vehicles like he's an old man. For me, this is a marine vehicle, and I don't care if I screw it up as long as I get where I am going. I resent that comment and counter, the last thing I want to do is die in a semi-wreck. I'm sure Ben just wanted to scare me as he makes the tires howl around the next corner, then overcorrects, and we slide sideways some. John suggests, perhaps we should slow down a little. Ben laughed and countered, I would, but then you told me about possible IEDs. Now there is no way in hell I'm going slower. Because of Ben's wild-ass driving, we made it to HQ in record time. Then we ran into our first problem. Flashback, Jennifer, in my room. Things were taken care of with Daniela, so I finally made it to my room to study. Grandmother was waiting and complimented me. That was a good thing you did with Daniela. Remember to always appear normal to her and others. I smiled at grandmother and replied, yes. Reading what happened to our relatives reinforces that. Grandmother remarked, most Americans no longer believe in witches except for certain areas of the country. But many foreigners still believe in witches. I boldly asked, Grandmother, what will happen with Mother? Grandmother sadly answered, unless she keeps her mouth quiet about us being witches, they will never let her out of the hospital. How does it make you feel that she's still in the hospital? I paused and thought for a moment, then confessed, in many ways it's better for me. I see you more often. She doesn't bother me about ballet, and the house is more peaceful. Grandmother agreed. Yes, your mother has always been a problem, and I don't think it will ever change. She made her decision, and now she needs to live with it. I asked, so what if I decided not to be a witch? Grandmother interrupted. It is too late for you. You've already decided, and there's no turning back. That made me feel better than grandmother warned. Daniela is coming, so I need to go. Grandmother left. I unlocked the door. Daniela walked in and said, I have some clean laundry for you. I questioned, so when is Jed coming over again? Daniela blushed and said, I do not know since he has not called me. I prodded, so pick up the phone and call him. Daniela countered, Senorita Jennifer, that is not how it is done in my country. I was tired of this game, so I asked, Daniela, which country do you live in now? Daniela replied, Senorita Jennifer, you know I live in America. I dropped the hammer and said, well, this is something that we do in America. And if you don't call him, I will, and will also tell him you want a pair of zapatos verdes. Daniela gasped and said, please no, Senorita Jennifer, that would embarrass me. I promise I will call him and invite him over tonight. I continued, good, then you and Jed can go for a walk in my old running shoes. Daniela began to complain, and I said, my old running shoes, or it's zapatos verdes. She finally relented. It felt good to win some arguments around here. Flashback, Alexei, father after dinner. Father said, Alexei, since you made the meal tonight, I will do the dishes. I replied, I would like to hear more about your new job today. You told me a little of it, but then I distracted you with my tales of the university. Father told me all about how much he enjoyed his new job as he did dishes. He said, Alexei, I finally feel like we are putting the terrible things from our past behind us. I agreed. Yes, Father, we have. Now, if you do not mind, I am going to return to my room and work on my homework. Father once again praised me. Alexei, I am so proud of you. I went to my room and began my studies. Flashback, Ira and Mira, continuing. There was joy in terminating the female Seleucus who brutalized us. It was not my original plan, but with the confusion caused by the deaths, the pursuit of our corporeal selves would be hampered. My biggest concern was Myra's statement that she would terminate herself before letting herself be captured again. Flashback, Todd, on the mission. The jet barely reached altitude when it was descending again. The next leg of the journey was going to require different transportation. Present, Ben and Jens, in their bedroom. With the interview over, we head to our bedroom to prepare for the sweat lodge experience. Jens asks, Ben, what am I supposed to wear to this sweat lodge thingy? Ben corrects her, Jens, this isn't a sweat lodge thingy, it's a sweat lodge ceremony. He goes into his closet where he pulls out a very nice and intricately beaded dress. I am shocked, so I ask, when did you get this done? Ben replied, Jens, one day I knew you would need this, so Destiny, and I have been working on it. I tanned the buckskin myself from a deer that I killed in Destiny, and I did the beadwork together. Because our babies are still gone, I'm more emotional than normal, so I begin to cry. Ben, this is so beautiful. Ben hugs me and says, only the best for my wife. Now let's get you into your dress. I begin to touch it to my face and remark, Ben, it's so soft and smooth. Ben replies, yeah, that's because we brain tanned, traditional Indian method of creating hides, the hide. I remark, Ben, it's white. I thought all buckskin was brown. Ben continues the education, Jens, we didn't smoke the hide, so that's why it's white. I'm a little embarrassed when I ask, so what do I wear under it? Ben nonchalantly replies, whatever you want. You will really sweat in the sweat lodge, so I would wear something to help absorb the sweat. You know, like a t-shirt and panties. I continue the questions. I hope the sweat won't run the leather. Ben smiles and says, Jens, this leather can be washed, so don't worry about it. I find a heavy t-shirt and an old pair of panties, put them on, and Ben slips the dress over my head. It fits me like a glove. I comment, hey, how did you know my size? Ben slaps my ass and says, because you're my wife, and that's one of my jobs. I ask, what am I supposed to wear on my feet? Ben facepalms and says, I forgot. He opens a drawer, pulls out a pair of beaded moccasins, and hands them over. Try these on. A knock at the door interrupts them. Ben opens it, and Destiny walks in, smiling. You two are almost ready. Now, it's time to apply Ben's ceremonial markings. Ben, dressed in traditional attire, moves to the bathroom mirror as Destiny carefully paints black symbolic designs on his face. She explains, once Ben completes his training, these markings will become permanent. I watch quietly, unsure how I feel about that, but I keep my thoughts to myself. Destiny smirks. Hey, I heard that. I roll my eyes, thinking, she always seems to know what's on my mind. Destiny says, Jennifer, that was rude. Ben scolds me. Jens, what did you do? I blush and confess. I told Destiny to keep her doggy nose out of our business. Then I quickly continue. But I'm just not sure I want those tattoos on your handsome face. Destiny fixes things by saying, Jennifer, usually it is a sign of pride for the shaman, but if you so vigorously object to it, they can be drawn on each time when needed. Ben reinforces things by saying, Jens, you're making too big of a deal out of this. If it really bothers you, then I won't make them permanent. Destiny says, okay, let's head to the sweat lodge. We begin the trip out of our room, and of course we meet Inga, and she says, present. Inga, questioning the group. I want to ask Jennifer to reconsider letting me hypnotize her, so I head toward the Blaine's room. I'm almost there when the door opens and I'm shocked. Destiny, Ben, and Jennifer look like, well, Indians. I sputter, where are you three going? Destiny replies, Inga, now is not a good time for interruptions. We are busy. I complain, but I want to hypnotize Jennifer. Jennifer emphatically states, Inga, I told you there's no way that's going to happen, and I mean it. I counter, but it really helped with Glenn, and I thought it might help you recall more information. Jennifer says, Inga, I recall everything just fine, and I sure as heck am not going to let you poke around in my head. Destiny and company continue heading outside. I try to follow, and Ben says, Inga, we are performing an Indian sweat lodge ceremony, and unfortunately, you are not invited. I begin to complain, then Destiny turns, glares at me, and says, Inga, please do not force this issue. It annoys me, and you should remember what happened to Bill Brown when I was annoyed. They continue walking, and I'm flabbergasted by Destiny's threat. Present, Ben, Jens, and Destiny, the sweat lodge ceremony. We begin to hike up the hill behind the cabin, and Jens wonders, just where is this sweat lodge? Destiny replies, it is strategically located at the top of the ridge and also aligned with the spiritual world. I explain, Jens, the sweat lodge door always faces east. East is birth and new beginnings. This is where personal intentions or aims are set. The south is childhood and relationships, where we choose to pray for others. The west, the hottest spot, is a place of time, death, rebirth, and healing. Here is where negative influences are released and where healing for others and us is meditated. The north is the place of the ancestors. It is embracing the quiet, deep wisdom of the ages. Destiny says, Jennifer, because we are seeking contact with your grandmother, you will sit in the north. Jens asks, Ben, where are you sitting? I reply, I am sitting in the south because I am praying for our children, you and your grandmother. Jens asks, so what's going to happen? Destiny replies, Jennifer, we have no idea, as this has never been done before. We are hoping to contact your grandmother in the spiritual place which she inhabits. I add, we are hoping you have a vision of her. We arrive at the sweat lodge, and Jens remarks, I had no idea this place was even here. It looks sort of like an igloo that's made out of hides. Outside is a bigger pile of dirt that looks sort of like an altar. On it I see the skull of an American bison. There is also a clay pipe and what look to be some herbs. I notice a fire that is burning in wood piled to remind me of a teepee. I remark, this is really interesting. Can you tell me more about the ceremony? Destiny says, this is the heart fire where we heat the stones. Ben comments, called grandfathers. Destiny continues, the stones will provide the heat for the sweat lodge, and I will pour the water on the grandfathers to produce the steam. Destiny commands, first we will smudge ourselves with sage. She picks up an herb bundle from the altar, lights it in the heart fire, and I watch as she lets the smoke cover her body. She passes it to Ben. He does the same. Then it's my turn, and I mimic them. Ben states, now we walk clockwise around the heart fire, which is also called the path of life. Destiny announces, good, now we can enter the sweat lodge. Ben opens the door, and we crawl inside. Destiny comes in last and has an assortment of the grandfather stones with her. She says, Jennifer, please sit there. Then she indicates the location where I am to sit. She places the grandfather stones in a pit in the middle of the sweat lodge and then recites some words that I don't understand. Ben clues me in by saying, Jens, she's praying in Cherokee. I am shocked at how lyrical the language is as she continues. Once she's finished, she explains, I have asked the Great Spirit to help us contact your grandmother. Now we need to see if he was listening. She pours a ladle of water on the stones, and instantly the temperature explodes in the sweat lodge. I ask, so what do we do now? Ben says, Jens, think about your grandmother. I begin thinking about grandmother, remembering how she told me that Ben would be a bridge between witches and Indians, and then I sputter, grandmother. Yes, I can see her just as when she used to come into my room when I was a girl. Destiny begins to sing again in Cherokee. Grandmother says, Jennifer, my good little witch, we have a problem. I'm not sure if I should speak, but Ben leans over and says, Jens, talk with her. I reply, yes, grandmother, we have a problem. For other witches have taken Fiona and James. I have no idea where they are. Grandmother says, I certainly know where they are. Let me show you. Instantly, I am seeing through the eyes of a large bird. Ben sees what I see, knows what's going on, and remarks, Jens, you're an eagle. I am following a vehicle and grandmother says, Jennifer, Fiona, and James are in that car. I swoop down lower and see them in the back seat, between a couple of the other witches. Then suddenly I'm being attacked. It's an owl and everything disappears, including grandmother. I look at Ben and Destiny and can tell they are not happy, so I ask, what happened? Ben comes over, holds me, and says, Jens, you were attacked by an owl, and that is a really bad thing. Destiny continues, Jennifer, owls are the bringers of death. I assume the first thing which comes to my mind and begin to sob. Ben, they are going to kill Fiona and James. Destiny explains, Jennifer, the owl killed your eagle, but it does not mean that they are going to kill Fiona and James. Ben says, besides from what I saw, we now know where they are. I question, Ben, are you sure? He smiles and says, yes, I am. It's time we go and get our children. I hug Ben, and we leave the sweat lodge with renewed hope. Flashback, Masha and Tanya, meeting the benefactors at the storefront. Tanya's phone rang. She answered it. There was a short discussion, and she explained, Masha, that's one of the ladies who wants to pay for the storefront and modifications. Do you mind if we stop back by the storefront and meet her? I looked at Linda and replied, Linda still seems to be fine, so I guess we could do that. But then I need to return home and make lunch for both of us. Tanya suggested, Masha, we can have lunch out. I cautioned, Tanya, I am very particular about what Louise, Linda, and I eat. Tanya asked, what sort of diet restrictions do you have? I answered, we eat mostly natural foods without any added sugar in them. Tanya smiled and replied, then I know the perfect place for lunch, so don't worry about it. I cautioned, Tanya, I didn't bring much money with me. Tanya laughed. Don't worry, Masha, we will charge it to the project. That reminded me of something, so I asked, Tanya, I am assuming we will need a bookkeeper for the business. Tanya replied, Masha, you're correct, but don't worry, I know several who are qualified. I shook my head and commented, Tanya, I never thought this would happen so quickly. Are you sure that it is a good thing? Tanya gave me a look and said, Masha, we might be able to stop some of the domestic violence by offering the classes. I questioned, does that happen often in this city? Tanya replied, Masha, even one time is one time too many. Now let's leave and meet the benefactor. I pick up Linda's car seat, place it in the back of Tanya's car, take the passenger seat, and we proceed back to the storefront. We arrive, and I see an older woman standing in front of the store talking to the realtor. Tanya honks her horn and drives around back to park. I confess, Tanya, I am a little nervous about meeting this woman. Tanya laughed, Masha, don't worry. She has read all about you in the papers, and she's on our side. Tanya parked. I took Linda in her car seat out of the back of Tanya's car, and we walked around to the front in our meeting. When we arrived, the realtor and the older lady had gone inside, so we followed. The older woman saw me, ran up to me, hugged me, and said, Masha, it's good to finally meet you. I was a little shocked, and Tanya mentioned, Gladys, Russians are not used to hugging. Gladys pulled away and apologized. Masha, sorry about that, but I'm a person who hugs. I looked down and replied, I apologize for my awkwardness, Gladys, but I am still becoming accustomed to some American customs. Gladys said, Masha, I wanted you to come here first so I could meet you, and also because I thought it would be good to hire an interior designer to redo this storefront. I know Tanya already has a list of changes that need to be made. I would like this place to be the nicest yoga and martial arts studio ever. I asked, will it be very expensive? Gladys laughed and said, Masha, you don't need to worry about the money since I have more money than I will ever spend before I die. I questioned. Tanya said there were several benefactors. Gladys interrupted. She is correct, but the other benefactors, all my friends, asked me to take charge of this. So what do you say? Can we hire my interior designer? I replied, that would be fine. However, the person needs to understand that functionality is my primary concern. Gladys asked, can't something be both functional and beautiful? I replied, of course it can, and that would make everything even better. Gladys said, good. So you worry about making it functional while she worries about the aesthetics. She continued, let me give her a call and get her over here. Tanya looked at her watch and interrupted. Gladys, we need to go out for lunch. Gladys said, great, she can meet us there. Where are we going? Tanya said, Masha and Linda only eat certain foods, so I thought we would go to the organic bistro. Gladys said, I've never eaten there. Tanya begins to describe the organic bistro to Gladys, and Gladys finally relents and said, hell, this might even add a couple years to my life. We all chuckle. Gladys calls her driver and said, let's all just take my car. I am shocked when an older Rolls-Royce limousine pulls up in front of the store. The driver opened the door for us, and I asked, where's the best spot for Linda's car seat? Gladys said, this thing is like a tank, so how about on the back seat? I put Linda's car seat on the rear seat, fastened her in with a seat belt as the driver asked, where to, ma'am? Tanya said, the organic bistro, and then gave him the address. Then we moved off through the traffic. Flashback, Jack, Ben, and John, midnight requisition run. We arrived at HQ and the shit hit the fan. Last time we pulled right through the gate without problems, but this time the guard stopped us and one demanded, state your mission. Jack tried to bullshit them. We have orders to pick up supplies. The guard replied, let me see the orders. Jack pretended to try to find them as I helped by acting like I was looking for them too. John even got in the act from the back. Jack swore, son of a bitch, I think we left them back at the hospital. Listen, can't you give us a break? The guard replied, and get my ass in a sling, no thank you. No paperwork, no entrance to the base. I was surprised when Ben caved. Okay, no problem. He began to turn the semi around and I asked, Ben, what the hell? He replied, Jack, there has to be a back gate into this place, so why fight these scumsuckers? We will just sneak into the back. Ben got the semi turned around and began to skirt the fence and head toward the back. We were about halfway there and got stopped by a Humvee. The guards exited the Humvee, pointed their rifles at us, and demanded, what the hell are you doing? Ben jumped out of the semi-cab, walked up to them, and in a few minutes he had them laughing. They moved the Humvee out of the way. Ben climbed back into the cab, and the Humvee escorted us to the rear gate. I asked, Ben, what the hell did you tell those guards? Ben chuckled and replied, I told them the truth, that we were here to steal the general's coffee and as many other supplies as we needed. John answered with amazement, they fell for that? I explained, John, of course they did. There's certainly no love lost between enlisted men and the general. Ben added, that's right, they hate it when the brass gets special favors. The Humvee took us right up to the cold storage. The guards hopped out of their vehicle and asked, you guys need any help? I replied, sure, if you don't mind. They laughed, and one said, don't worry about it. We're more than happy to help since the general just got his new coffee in 2 days ago. With the extra help, we had the semi packed full in no time at all, making sure that we totally decimated all the private stashes of the general. Hell, we not only took his coffee, we found a shitload of steaks that we commandeered. Hell, we even took some special desserts he had ordered in. The Humvee escorted us through the back gate, then they pulled up beside us, rolled down the window, and said, you guys be careful because the Taliban have been going after semis on the road. With the semi loaded down, Ben had to drive in a less insane manner, and that presented some problems. Flashback, Jennifer, in my room. Daniela went back downstairs. I snuck out of my room to my little hiding place at the top of the stairs and listened as she called Jed. The phone call was mostly in Spanish, but I recognized enough of it to realize that Jed was coming over for dinner and then they were going to take a walk. I slipped back into my room just in time because Daniela knocked on the door, came in and asked, Senorita Jennifer, what should we make for dinner since Jed is coming over? I replied, Daniela, why not make some of your traditional Peruvian food tonight, as long as it's not ceviche? Daniela replied, do not worry, Senorita Jennifer. I do not have the seafood for ceviche. Perhaps I will make him ají de gallina. I asked, what the heck is ají de gallina? Daniela explained, it is chicken with a slightly spicy yellow pepper sauce, and I will make rice with it. I smiled and replied, Daniela, that sounds great to me. When is Jed arriving? Daniela replied, he will be here at 6. She checked her watch and continued, Senorita Jennifer, I need to start cooking. Do you think Senor Donaldson will be here for dinner? I thought about things and said, no, I don't think he will be home for dinner. Daniela remarked, I will make enough food just in case he is. Flashback, Alexei, father after dinner. I was very happy with how father accepted me going to the university by myself, so I could accomplish more. I was concerned at first that he would be angry with me, but I should have known he would trust me. I certainly had enough homework now to keep me busy for a few days. I began working. Father came into my room later and again praised me. Alexei, thank you for going to the university today. It will really help me at work to not have to take off Fridays to take you to school. How goes your homework? I replied, Father, it's great. I finally feel like I am challenged. Father said, well, my good boy, I'm going to sleep. Do not stay up too late. I promised, let me finish this one section, then I will go to sleep. Flashback, Ira and Mira, continuing. We effected an escape from the local area and commenced pursuit for a hideout. Flashback, Todd, on the mission. Once the plane landed, I began to search for a vehicle to take me across the border. Yes, I would finally enter the USA again, but not in the open. But I needed to cross it someplace without a checkpoint, so my location would remain a secret. Present, Jens, Ben, and others, rescuing Fiona and James. We return to the house and begin to make plans for the rescue of my babies. I feel I need to comment. We will need to wear masks so the other witches can't put spells on us. Destiny says, for Ben, that won't be necessary since the shaman tattoos will protect him. I remember the many times I used the formication spell on others and ask, are you sure? Destiny replies, certainly, and I will be in my wolf form so they won't bother me. I ask Ben, who else are we bringing? Ben replies, someday I need to become more versed in what Jens can do as a witch. However, it's good to know that my shaman tattoos will protect me from any spells they could cast on me. Jens asks a great question, one I've been thinking about, so I reply, Jens, I have been thinking about that and I have decided that we need to go in with a small but potent tactical team. I was thinking about the three of us and Mira and Ira. Jens further asks, Ben, what are we going to do to the witches who took my babies? I look at her and reply, Jens, I hate to say this, but we will never be safe as long as they continue to live. Jens surprises me when she concurs, I agree with you, my love. However, there might be another problem. I reply, what's that? Jens explains, I get the feeling that the four witches are not all of those involved. I think it's a whole coven of witches. I remember my marine training and reply, then we will kill them all and let God sort them out later. Jens falters some. Ben, I'm not sure all of them are guilty. And what if there are other children or women? I try to reason with her. Jens, if we leave any of them alive, then we are putting Fiona and James at risk. Destiny confirms my plan. Jennifer, Ben is correct. While I do not like the idea of taking the lives of women and children, Jens interrupts with an ultimatum. Ben, I will not kill any children. I ask, then what would we do with any children? Jens smiles and says, bring them here, of course. Destiny asks, Jennifer, will they be witches? Jens replies, since they are in a coven, then they probably will be. I begin to open my mouth to shoot down this idea when Jens begs, please Ben, if they are children, it won't be their fault. I look at Destiny for help and she says, Ben, I don't think you have a choice about this. I shrug my shoulders in resignation and agree. Jens, I don't like this, but I guess we will do this. Jens jumps up and down and says, great, I always wanted more babies. I order, okay, it's time to gear up for this mission. Jens changes out of her Indian dress and into BDUs. I change into some BDUs and we head to the weapons room. I call on my comm unit, Mira and Ira, please meet us in the weapons room. Mira starts, oui monsieur. Ira finishes. Mon capitaine. I want to complain, but I know others are on the comm channel, so I leave it alone. They arrive in practically no time and Ira asks, what is so important that you reassigned us off patrol duty? I explain, we have discovered where Fiona and James are being held, and I would like you two on the recovery mission with us. Jens adds her contingency. It's a witches' coven, so we do not know how many witches will be there. We plan on taking out everyone unless they are children. The children we will bring here. Ira asks, Ms. Blaine, we know how powerful you are. Do we need to take special precautions? Jens continues, yes, you need to keep your faces covered or they can cast spells on you. Ira asks, Ms. Blaine, will our helmets provide adequate protection? They are wearing full-face motorcycle helmets with mirrored visors. Jens affirms, yes, as long as you keep the face masks down. And don't worry if they do cast a spell on you, because I should be able to counter it. Mira asks, Mr. Blaine, are you bringing your Ulfbert? I smile at them and reply, not this time. I'm counting on you and Ira to provide the long-range support. I'm bringing AM-32A1. The M32A1 is the USMC SOCOM 40mm multi-shot grenade launcher of choice. The M321A1 is a handheld, gas plug operating, semi-automatic, revolving action, 40mm multi-shot grenade launcher. I can fire 6 grenades in 3 seconds or less. Ira asks, Mr. Blaine, would it be possible to bring additional magazines for our Ulfberts? I reply, of course, I already have some loaded and ready. They are over there in the ammo rack. Mira and Ira walk over and begin stuffing magazines into their body armor. Jens asks, Ben, what should I bring? Ben counters, Jens, how do you plan on protecting your face? Jens looks a little guilty as she asks, Destiny, could you give me some fake tattoos like those on Ben? I'm certain that will protect me. Destiny doesn't laugh, but instead teases, sure Jennifer, I can even make them permanent if you would like. Jens says, no way, I just thought it would be cool if Ben and I looked the same. Mira and Ira simultaneously chime in, we like this idea. Destiny, could you also provide for us the tribal tattoos like Ben? Destiny replies, of course. I guess we will be the shaman squad. Jens giggles and says, hey, I like that. Destiny again teases, well, if we made the tattoos permanent, then it would be official. It's my turn to complain. Destiny, there's no way I want those permanently on my wife. Mira starts, Destiny, we might want the tattoos. Ira finishes, permanently. Destiny wisely says, why don't we see how the two of you look with the temporary ones before we make them permanent? Destiny starts with Jens and does a remarkable job. She moves on to Mira and Ira and finishes up, we all look great. Then she asks, Ben, how are we going to sneak out of here without Inga and the rest of the FBI following us? I think for a moment, then Mira says, I might have a plan. Ira confronts her quickly. Mira, this had better not be one of your crazy plans. Mira sticks her tongue out at Ira and declares, Ira, this is a good plan. Mira explains, Ira and I will detain Inga and the FBI agents. I hold up my hand and reply, Mira, that won't work. However, I do have an idea. We will load your motorcycles in the back of my truck and I will haul ass out of the garage and crash through the fence before they even know what's happening. Ira suggests a modification, Mr. Blaine. Instead of you crashing through the fence and possibly damaging your truck, Mira and I will depress the fence to the ground and you can drive over it. Then we will follow on our motorcycles. I smile and reply, I like that plan even better. Jens teases, that's just because you don't want to scratch the paint on your shiny toy. I hug my wife and counter, I thought you were my shiny toy. Jens, who is still very emotional, begins to cry. Mira and Ira look at her and Destiny explains, Jennifer is very upset about her children, so her emotions are ever present and surface quickly. I look at Mira and Ira, and then Ira asks, Ben, what are we going to do about the drone machines? Jens says, don't worry about it. I am sure I can still shut the drones down for a while. I look at my watch and order, okay, Mira and Ira get to the fence with your motorcycles. Jens, in 5 minutes shut down the drones. I will make a quick stop at the front door for you to hop into the truck, then we will haul ass. Jens smiles and says, Ben, you've forgotten something I asked about earlier. I don't have a weapon. I reply, well, grab AM4 and some mags. She kisses me on the cheek and whispers in my ear, Ben, you are going to get so lucky later. Mira, Ira, and Destiny leave. As Jens gets ready to head to the computer room, I suggest, Jens, see if you can also knock the comm system out while you're at it. She giggles and says, oui, mon capitaine. And the mission is on to rescue Fiona and James. Flashback, Masha, Tanya, Gladys, and others, eating lunch. We arrived at the restaurant, which was called the Organic Bistro, and I was pleasantly shocked. It was a very nice, upscale restaurant, and the smells emanating from the kitchen were incredible. Gladys took charge and demanded a large table, which of course she received immediately. I put Linda in a high chair they provided, and we sat at the table. In a short time, the interior designer arrived, and she asked, why are we eating here? Gladys fired back, since when did you become picky about having a free lunch? The interior designer laughed and replied, Gladys, with you there are no free lunches. That's why I brought my samples with me. I know this will be a working lunch. Gladys made the introductions. Melanie, this is Tanya the lawyer, and I'm sure you recognize Masha from the news reports. Melanie held out her hand and said, Masha, it's a great pleasure to meet you. You have quickly become a legend in our little city. I shake her hand and crimson. Tanya notices and comes to my rescue. Melanie, Masha is a little shy, so please don't embarrass her too much. Gladys remarks, Masha, there's nothing for you to be shy about. I would say that you are one of the best things to happen to this city in a long time. I finally find my voice and apologize. I am ashamed that I killed the teenage girl. There was a round of affirmation which Tanya started. Masha, that little bitch should have been killed years ago. Gladys added, Tanya is certainly right. We have programs in place that should have prevented her from becoming the menace she was. Melanie joined in. She made it impossible to ride the buses. Gladys has sparked my interest, so I asked, Gladys, what sort of programs do you have for teenagers? Melanie surprised me when she enumerated, Masha, Gladys and her friends have many programs in place to help the disadvantaged youth in this city. Gladys interrupted. That's right, and Melanie is a prime example of one program's success. Melanie continues, I was raised on the other side of the track, and thanks to Gladys' programs I was able to attend college and get my degree in interior design. I give Tanya a quizzical look and she explained, Masha doesn't always understand American euphemisms. Then she continued, to be from the other side of the track means Melanie grew up in a bad part of town. Melanie affirmed, yes, it was much worse than the neighborhood of the teenage girl you killed. She had it lucky compared to me. In the neighborhood where I lived, I was lucky to get out before I was assaulted. Gladys complained, unfortunately, no matter how much help you try to give some people, some of them will still choose a life of crime. I questioned, how do you try to reach these girls, and what about the boys? Gladys explained, We set up after-school programs for them, and yes, they are also for boys. I think for a moment, then I make a proposition. We could offer them yoga classes after school. Melanie said, that would be a great idea, but I'm not sure we should teach them Krav Maga. Gladys reinforced her statement, yes. That would be a mistake. I wanted to counter their attitude. However, I could see their resolve, so I decided to wait on a better time for that battle. Flashback, Jack, Ben, and John, midnight requisition run. We were hauling ass the best that we could with the load that we had. Our heavy load has forced Ben into a saner speed, but we're still making good time. I checked my watch and remarked, we should just make it to Boo in time to catch the chopper back to the hospital. Then all hell broke loose. Leave it to Jack's big mouth to jinx the mission. He no sooner got the words out of his mouth than we were attacked by the Taliban. I downshifted and floored this truck and hoped like hell there were no IEDs in the road. Jack leaned to open his window and began to return fire. I yelled at John, are you any good with a rifle? Jack answered, John's a hell of a cook, but can't shoot worth shit. John agreed, Jack's right, I never really learned how to shoot. I wanted to cuss him out, but I was too busy driving, so instead I ordered, John, I don't care if you can't hit the broadside of a barn, roll down the window, take my rifle, and return fire. Just make sure you don't shoot me. John took my rifle, but didn't realize it was set to burst mode, and damn, near emptied a mag with the next breath. I yelled at Jack, show him how to set the rifle to single shot, and give him a new mag. Jack as usual complained, Ben, I have my hands full. I ordered, John, hand the rifle up here. I steered the semi with my leg against the wheel. He handed it to me. I switched the fire selector to single shot, put in a new magazine, and handed it back. He fired a couple of rounds and commented, this is much better. Just then I saw a Taliban scumsucker with an RPG, so I steered off the road, aimed directly at him, and ran his ass over. Jack yelled, that was a hell of a trick. I fought this beast back onto the road and continued driving, then it finally happened. Flashback, Jennifer, helping Daniela cook. Daniela remarked that she needed to cook, so I asked, would you mind if I helped? Daniela smiled at me and replied, Senorita Jennifer, that would be a big help. We both headed to the kitchen, and I began to learn how to make aji de gallina. But it was really aji de pollo because we didn't have any older chicken in the house. Daniela explained, gallina is what you call a hen, a chicken that has begun to lay eggs. Pollo is younger chicken. I remarked, I always thought chicken was just chicken. Daniela laughed and corrected me. No, Senorita Jennifer, there is a big difference in chicken. Gallina is older and much tougher than pollo. Most of the time it is used in caldo de gallina. I asked, what the heck is caldo? Daniela answers, good, we will teach you a new Spanish word. Caldo is soup. It is very popular in Peru. I asked, so why use pollo? Daniela explained, in America, they do not differentiate between gallina and pollo, so I buy pollo because it's all they sell. I pause for a thought. I wonder what happens to the gallina? Daniela says, I think it is feed for dogs. Senorita Jennifer, please clean the chicken. Daniela hands me a whole chicken, and I admit, Daniela, I've never cleaned a whole chicken before. Daniela said, Senorita Jennifer, then I will teach you. She began to clean the chicken while showing me how it was done. It was gross, and I decided it was something that I never wanted to do. Mother usually bought prepared chicken breasts. Flashback, Mira and Ira, continuing. I asked, sister, why are we hiding? Should we not take the fight to Kostia? Ira answered, sister of mine, Kostia, with his many men, is too strong to attack successfully. I doubted her assertion, however I did not press the issue. Flashback, Todd, on the mission. My first stop, before crossing the border, was to obtain a weapon. The coyotes, a person who smuggles undocumented immigrants into the United States, especially across the Mexican border, that I would be using to help cross were not always trustworthy. Of course, finding a weapon in Mexico was no problem, especially with the money I was prepared to spend. I not only found one, I also found a spare, one for my back and one in a holster on my ankle. That done, I went looking for a coyote, who was easy to find. Present, Ben, Jens, and others, the mission. I wait the requisite 5 minutes, then haul ass out of the garage and stop at the front door. Jens runs like crazy and jumps into the passenger seat of the truck. I ask, did you get everything taken care of? Jens grins and answers, of course I did. Gretchen is good, but she's no match for me. Both the drones and the comm systems are down for a while. I floor it, and we speed toward the fence that Mira and Ira have depressed. I fly over the fence, and the twins give chase on their motorcycles. So far the plan is working perfectly. The twins' motorcycles are making a hell of a racket. So further down the road, I pull over and command, we need to get your noisy-ass motorcycles in the back of the truck so we don't announce our arrival. I begin to exit the truck, and Ira responds, Mr. Blaine, do not worry because we will ride our motorcycles into the back of your truck. Mira lowers the tailgate while Ira does a wheelie and reaches the tailgate. In an amazing feat, She rides her motorcycle into the bed of the truck without destroying the tailgate. Mira duplicates her sister's action. They secure their motorcycles to the sides of the bed, hop out of the bed, and climb into the back seat. Jens remarks, I can't believe what Mira and Ira just did on their motorcycles. I thought I had seen everything when Ben rode his motorcycle. You do remember we bought for motorcycles, don't you? But they took it to a whole new level. I turn to them and comment, I've never seen riding like that in my life. Mira dismissively replies, Ms. Blaine, that is typical riding for us. Ira offers, Ms. Blaine, if you would like, we would be happy to improve your riding skills. Ben complains, enough of this. We need to concentrate on the mission. I ask, Ben, where's Destiny? Ben replies, she's scouting ahead of us, and we will rendezvous right before we attack the compound. Ira questions, Ms. Blaine, how did you discover the location of your children? I reply, Ira, we used a sweat lodge ceremony where I contacted my deceased grandmother. She turned into an eagle, and we're able to see the location through the eagle's eyes. Ben recognized exactly where the witches were located before an owl killed the eagle. Mira scoffs, I am not sure I believe this. Ben angrily snaps, Mira, what you choose to believe is your choice. What Jens said is the truth, and you will recognize the truth when we arrive at the compound. Ira counters, Mira, it does not seem unreasonable to believe this story, especially with what we have seen and been through with Ms. Blaine. Ben continues, that's right, Mira. Did you already forget what Jens did for you? Mira replies, no, Mr. Blaine, I did not forget and never will. I just judged the story not believable. I come to the rescue. Mira, I did not make up this story, it's the truth. Ben brings the truck to a stop, and we all turn to him for the reason. We look and find Destiny in the middle of the road. Destiny runs up to the truck, turns back into her human form, and says, Ben, we greatly underestimated the number of witches here. There must be close to 200 of them. They are holding some individuals in cages, including Fiona and James, other children, and some women. I complain, they are holding my babies in cages. Destiny confirms, that's correct, Jennifer. Plus there are guards everywhere. Ben asks, okay, Destiny, how do you recommend we proceed? Mira interrupts, Mr. Blaine, we should kill them all. Destiny replies, Mira, that would not be feasible. Ben, I would recommend that we rescue Fiona and James and the other children. I question, what about the other women? Destiny states, Jennifer, I am not sure we could rescue that many people. Ben appears to be thinking, then he says, you know, we could call in the FBI for this and rescue everyone. I remind him, Ben, first I want my babies, and did you also forget about the spells the witches can cast? Ben asks, Jens, can't you counteract any of their spells? I hesitantly reply, I should be able to. Ben responds, Jens, you don't sound so sure. I explain, Ben, I can counteract any light magic spells, but if they are using dark magic, I can't. Their power is different and more dangerous. Ben states, Jens, I'm not sure what the difference is, but I do believe you. How will you know the difference? I reply, if we got close enough, I could probably sense it. Ben asks, how much closer? I reply, I don't know, so slowly move forward. Before Ben moves the truck, Destiny says, I think I can slip into the compound, release Fiona and James and bring them out. I reply, Destiny, that would be great. Ben begins to move the truck forward and adds, then we call the FBI and get them to take down these scumsuckers. Destiny changes back into her wolf form and heads toward the compound. I don't worry about her scaring Fiona and James because they have seen her as a wolf before. As Ben slowly moves the truck forward, a chill runs down my spine. I tense up and finally say, Ben, stop immediately. This is what I was worried about. I can sense something dark and dangerous from them, even from here. Ben asks, do you think Destiny will be safe? I reply, I'm not sure what kind of power they have over spirit animals. I wish grandmother had warned me about this before we came. Ben hesitates. So, do you think my protective symbols would help? I shake my head. I don't think they would. Mira suggests, Mr. Blaine, if we could get close enough, we could create a distraction. I firmly respond, Mira, that would be unwise. If they use their abilities against you, I don't know if I could counteract it. Frustrated, Mira complains, so we just sit here and do nothing? Ira, ever the voice of reason, says, Mira, that's correct. There's nothing we can do against them right now. Mira clenches her fists. That's unacceptable. She opens the truck door, slips outside, and begins to work her way close to the compound. Ira states, I cannot let my sister attempt this foolishness by herself. She also leaves the truck and I say, those two are being stupid. If something happens to them, I'm not sure what to do. We begin to hear the sound of their rifles firing and Ben says, shit, I might as well give them some help. I caution, Ben, what are you planning? He smiles at me and says, I'm going to lob a shitload of tear gas grenades into the compound to give them cover. Let's see how the scumsuckers like that. He steps out of the truck, changes the grenades in his M32A1 and begins to fire like crazy. He loads it up again and continues to fire while we hear the twins' rifles barking. The next thing we know, Destiny, Fiona, James, and the twins are running toward the truck. Ben switches grenades and begins blowing up the compound. Destiny runs past Ben and says, "There's no time for that. We need to leave immediately." Ben tosses the M32A1 into the back of the truck. Everyone climbs into the cab. Ben fires the truck up, and we begin to head away from the compound. Destiny says, "Thank you, Mira, Ira, and Ben for providing a distraction so I could rescue Fiona and James." Fiona says, "Mama, those were bad evil witches. They were going to make us into bad witches too." Ben looks at me and says, "Yince, call the FBI agents at the cabin and get them out here." I ask Ben, "What about the witches? Won't they cast dangerous spells on them?" Ben says, "Well, we will just have to figure out a way to counteract those spells." Dear listeners, please share your thoughts in the comments section below and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.